This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
If you're getting any compensation, it's not charity.
Russ Wakeland. You put me on a boat with frickin' dragons attacking me and whatnot? Now we're talking. And Mack Martin in the third chair.
And that's how I learned that rum doesn't mix with baby formula.
With contributions from Total Fangirl.
Vampires do not sparkle.
And our loyal listener.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming out at the speed of a hovering iron steed, decked out in leather and fringe, sporting a bull skull and powered by pure liquid evil. Today's edition is brought to you by John H. and all of our other great patrons over at patreon.com/the D6 generation. Head on over there and become a patron today. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today our panelists are Russ Rex Wayland Wakeland and all-around gamer guru and weird wizard Mack Monty Marshall Martin. Let's begin. Ooh. Issue number 1. Where would we be in the world without folks willing to spill the beans? Seriously, with nations, corporations, and individuals holding all their cards so closely to their vests, where can the rest of us turn for a good rumor? Well, we need to talk to the brave individuals that step up to the plate and leak, of course. Question. The most famous recent leaker is Edward Snowden, who stole countless secrets and documents during his time as a contractor for the U.S. government. Snowden targeted the U.S. NSA and other members of something called the Five Eyes Alliance. Ooh. What do all 5 of the nations included in the Five Eyes Alliance have in common? James Rivington Russ.
There's an I in their name.
Philip Maisie Mack.
David Cross is an expatriate from each of them.
That is actually true, but I'm still going to say no! They all speak English! American, England, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. Well, mostly English. Issue number 2! As politically incorrect as it is nowadays, there was a time when Cowboys and Indians was a favorite game of young boys throughout the United States. Rife with stereotype perpetuating elements and cultural insensitivity, it was nonetheless central to the youngest experiences of more than a generation and the foundation of many people's nostalgic relationship with both cowboys and one version of the Native American. Question. The magazine Cowboys and Indians is an American magazine that focuses on what it calls a Western lifestyle. It began its publication in what decade? William Rogers Russ.
I'm going to go with 1920.
Frank H. Maynard Mack.
I'm going to go with 1990s.
Oh, that was a blind guess. We're going to have to give it to Mack.
Oh, geez,
but that's
really?
completely 1992.
Wow.
Yes.
Who could have possibly guessed that other than Mack, clearly? I don't know what else to say about that. Okay, issue number 3.
The worst time for it to
Do you have a subscription? Never mind. Issue number 3. In the aftermath of the controversial 2013 predictions results episode, many folks have inundated the D6G offices with snide remarks concerning the Guardians of the Galaxy and how easily they will topple multiple predictions for 2014. The movie is set to be released in the summer of 2014 and does indeed look to be quite interesting. Question. Although rebooted by our own Dan Abnett in 2008, the original Guardians of the Galaxy made their first appearance in what decade? Rocket Raccoon Russ.
1970.
Martinek Tanaga Mack.
1960s.
Oh my God! No more date questions for Mack. Russ, you were close, but no. Not going to give it to you. I can't give it to you. My ego is on the line. 1969 is wow. I bet you have a subscription to that as well.
Google searched it all today after watching the preview.
There you go. Oh, that's a good point. That was a dumb question. Dumb McNerdigan. Dumb. At least Russ didn't do anything. Issue number 4. As we have stated in the past, science fiction is a genre of fiction dealing with imaginative content such as futuristic settings, futuristic science and technology, space travel, time travel, parallel universes, and extraterrestrial life. In short, it could be almost anything. But one thing we do know is what we like. And if something is already cool, it can only be made cooler by adding a few laser beams and some jet boosters.
Yeah.
Question. According to Popular Mechanics magazine, what is the best science fiction movie of all time? Rocket Red Russ.
Ooh, I'm going to go with Star Wars.
Victor Manchamak.
I'm going to go with Flash Gordon.
Oh, come on, guys. Popular Mechanics, Star Wars and Flash Gordon. 2001 A Space Odyssey, of course. You've got to respect any list, however, that can barely squeeze Avatar in the top 50. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
And by Conquistador Games, focusing on immersive and thematic games. More details at cqgames.com. And by Winged Hussar Publishing, providing books for students of history and history students. wingedhussarpublishing.com. And by Game Salute, publishing awesome tabletop games through the Powered by Game Salute program, supporting independent publishers, stores, and the industry at gamesalute.com.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Hey, and welcome
Nice.
to
Well, good pitch. Good tone.
and welcome to episode 142
There's an answer to something in there somewhere.
of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakelin.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Mack Martin.
Hey, Mac, welcome back to the show.
Mack Martin.
Yeah. So Mac, of
What
course.
have you been up to since we last spoke to you, Mac?
Jeez.
Oh man, where does the list stop? The M2E Wave 2 beta stopped, which thankfully wasn't a lot of work for me. That was mostly Justin. Through the Breach is ready to get going, and I started work on the new thing.
The new thing. Well, Craig,
you know what? We should probably talk to you about that new thing a little bit later on.
we need a Mac
That'll
chat.
be fun.
We need to chat with Mac about all that stuff. So we're going to catch up with Mac here later this episode, and then later after that, Mac's got to jet out of here. Something about like major work projects and other various sundry tasks to do as a big wig game designer guy.
Yeah,
we are then going
he's
to talk
busy.
about the new hotness from our friends at Outlaw Miniatures, Wild West Exodus.
Yes, the full review that you've all been chomping at the bit
lot
for.
of folks been
If there
asking
were
us.
any horses left, which there aren't, so
Right.
no chomping, no bits.
So there you have it. So first, before we get to all that, we got to get some business.
Business.
Let's see. First of all, a couple announcements here. One, Lost Chapters 71 is out now, book 71. And in this Lost chapter, we discussed what, Craig? Do you remember?
We resurrected, once again, the Where Are They Now? The Games Edition.
Yes, right. One of our favorite segments. You guys asked us to come back once in a while and talk about the games we reviewed many moons ago.
Many
And
moons ago.
Do
and
we
some-
still play them? What do we like about them?
Where are they in our collections?
Where
How
are
much did
they
we get
now?
for them on eBay?
Exactly right. So we do exactly that thing. And that's out there now. And, of course, the best way to get that is through Patreon.
That's right.
Our Patreon page is live, and we appreciate your support. We've got a lot of new supporters out there. We're getting dangerously close to our second milestone, Craig. It's a little bit crazy.
I know it is. It's getting up there.
So what are we talking about with milestones and Patreon? Well, to find out more about how all that works, go to the d6generation.com, and on the right-hand side, you'll see a little logo. It looks like a orange P, and it says, click here to be a Patreon supporter. Check it out. You can see a video featuring Craig and me, and we talk all about how it's going to work.
That's
and
right.
you can follow along from there.
Yeah, and for as little as $2 an episode,
$1 an episode.
but $2 is what gets you the Lost Chapter.
Yes, that's true.
For $2 an episode, which is actually $1 for 120 minutes of entertainment at a time, which is actually less than a penny a minute.
Yes.
You could get all of the Lost Chapters for free.
The cheapest.
As well as access to us 24/7. We can even come pick you up if you get drunk and you don't want to drive, you don't feel comfortable. There's all kinds of reward levels.
It's the cheapest value in entertainment, which speaks to the quality of this content.
It does indeed. It does indeed.
Exactly right. So all that behind us now, what's the time now for, Craig?
Something about achievements in gaming.
It is indeed, and Achievements in Gaming is brought to you by all of our fantastic patrons over at Patreon. We just broke our second milestone. Woohoo! You guys are amazing. Check it all out at patreon.com/the D6 Generation. So, hey, Mac, what have you been playing lately?
Oh, goodness. I have a weekly Pathfinder game where half of my players wish we were playing 4th edition and the others are staunchly wishing we were wishing we were playing with more of the Pathfinder books.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
Nice.
no, well, I like both 4th and Pathfinder, and I get a lot of flack for being the guy who will have fun no matter what. I played obviously some Malifaux, some 40K. I've been running a little bit through the Breach. I've been playing Hearthstone, that new Blizzard game.
So you're liking that, huh?
It's fun, yeah. It's the demo itself. If you know what you're looking for and are paying attention, the demo, not the demo, but the tutorial that gets you into the game, is so subtle and perfectly paced that it's basically like a crash course in teaching anyone any game. And if you're going to be teaching someone a game, I recommend downloading and just at least playing that little bit.
Oh, so they nailed that, huh? Nice.
It's textbook perfection when it comes to a tutorial.
So I got to give you a couple of achievements here. So that noise there is Mac getting achievements for all that gamer goodness he just did.
And that's a lot of gamer goodness.
Let me follow up with you, Mac. So what are you playing for 40K armies lately?
Right now I'm playing, I have my Grey Knights as a core. I've had them as my primary army now for about 6 or 7 years. But I've also got some Guards, some Eldar that I'm just kind of putzing around with. Haven't really done much on them. Mostly I'm painting terrain, actually. One of my friends just bought a new house, and they've converted their garage into a gaming space, so we've been populating their tables.
Nice. Now, what about Malifaux? What are you running for crews in Malifaux?
Well, like I've heard from many, many, many guys before, my fiance has started to muscle me out of the guild. I had been playing Lady J for so long, but now she's picking up Sonya and Perdita, and soon, Lady J, and it's just no fun to constantly be playing guild versus guild. So I have started up the Vix, but once the plastics are out, I'll be defining myself as a Lucius player.
Ooh, nice. Nice. All right, so Craig, what have you been playing?
Well, I've been a combination of fits and starts here, feast and famine. A week where I did nothing, and then a week where I did a whole bunch of stuff. A couple more games of WWX under my belt a while ago, because it has been a little while. Sales of Glory, still making it to the table. We had Adepticon, which Russ bowed out of.
No, I'm going to Adepticon. I'm very excited about that.
TempleCon.
Oh,
TempleCon.
yes. No, I did
TempleCon. Bowed out of TempleCon.
Yes.
Bailed on his wingman.
Yeah,
it's
I did.
Okay.
I did.
It's fine.
It happened.
It's fine.
Not going to lie.
There actually was nothing new, because without Russ to push me into new games, I just settled back into my comfort zone and played a bunch of games. Sales of Glory, Rampage, Firefly. The only new game, which is intriguing because I played it twice and then bought it. And then we played it a bunch at TempleCon, and then Russ played it once and bought it.
Yes,
and that would be Bang the Dice Game.
Yeah, buddy. So Bang, we loved Bang back when we reviewed it in the show.
Russ loved it.
I do love Bang. I have all the expansions for Bang. I have a little cowboy hat I wear, and then make the sheriff wear the hat when we're playing Bang. The only problem with Bang is, I love how you build out your little tableau and you build out your equipment and all that. But the game does outstay its welcome. It goes a little long depending on your players. And it has player elimination.
And in a game that long, player elimination stinks.
But Bang the Dice Game, really a sweet implementation. Keeps it very clean, focuses on exactly what the best part is, and introduces a very innovative new mechanic, which is the Native American arrows.
Yes, the arrows. Floating over your head threateningly until they all fall at the same time.
They are brilliant. So how these things work is when you roll the dice, you're going to roll different things, and some of them are going to be indicate, and the icons are the same as the cards. You're familiar with Bang the card game. So some of the dice are like, the sights with a 1 or a 2. And that's how far away you must shoot. So you can pick which direction on the table you go. And you're going to shoot that guy and wound him. And there's all the player cards, and there's still the different roles in the game are the same. But then if you roll an arrow, you got to pull an arrow token from the center of the table and put it in front of your person. And as you get more arrows, you put more and more of these tokens in front of you. When the last token from the middle table is pulled, everybody who's got arrow tokens in front of them all takes wounds equal to the arrows they've got. Which is just brutally nasty, but I love how it works. It's really neat.
Yeah, I think the game is so far above and beyond Bang the original game that it Jones theories it right out of the room.
I think you're probably right.
Help me out here. Is this now? I know the original one came in a box shaped like a bullet. Does this one also come in a box shaped like a bullet?
Not. It comes in a very small, standard shaped.
It actually looks
box.
like the original Bang box. So if you did not get the bullet edition of Bang. It looks very similar. In fact, you could almost, if you glanced at it quickly, you would mistake it.
You can mistake it, which I almost did, which I would have been really annoyed with.
Yes, it's also very affordable. Isn't it $18?
It's $18
for all these custom dice with and some nice tokens.
It's got you've got really 5 custom dice. You've got all these cool cards. It's all linen, so card stock, really nice stuff. and it's so fast. The game plays in 10 to 15 minutes, and so even though there's still player elimination, in my opinion, it does what a lot of these dice games do when you've got a game and it's a really big, elaborate, cool game, but then they do like a little mini dice version that's kind of like, this game light for when you don't have the time. And it just does the theme. It captures the theme as well as the original, I think, to the point where I would rather play 8 games of this than 1 game of Bang, which is about roughly the right ratio.
It's about right. Yeah, it's really good.
I may have to pick up a copy of that for my next game night with the gang.
It is so much fun and so fast. Yeah. It's just
great filler.
I can't say it enough.
Yeah.
And then I rounded my gaming out with X-Wing, which hasn't made it to the table in a long time, so I was super excited about that. And we did a big giant mission with the blockade runner, with the Kenner blockade runner toy, and you can see pictures of that on my Twitter feed.
Did you see? Have you seen what they're showing for Wave 4 now? OMG.
The Wave 4 I'm excited about. Now, I'm less excited now about the Wave 3 stuff because of the scale issue.
Yeah, I was bummed they took the scale out.
I'm bummed, even more bummed when you look at the Kenner toy, which is cool, but it's a toy. It's not a cool model, not painted remotely to the quality of the Fantasy Flight stuff. And it's almost perfect. Then, of course, then you've got guys it's not really perfect. There's a 1.5 inch discrepancy. Well, if you're going to come back at me with 1.5 inch discrepancy, then don't dare tell me you're spending the money on the FFG one.
Hold on. Oh, okay, because the FFG ones, they are based on the Lucasfilm craziness.
Well,
they are super to scale.
Except the problem is, Mac, and that's
except for the Wave 4, which I understand going way too big is going to be it would
exactly
probably be too expensive for the end consumer, and they had to make a hard choice.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not faulting them on the choice. I'm just not as excited about the ships as I have been with all the others.
I'm excited about the Wave 5 ones, though, the ones with the TIE Defender and the TIE Phantom.
But that's because you're a video game guy. These are all video game ships. They look way cooler than the other video game ship that came out in the Wave 3, or Wave 2, whatever it was.
Yeah,
but
can't wait.
Anyway, so that was an awesome game. The pictures were really cool. And then we have a series of snowstorms that have completely knocked out our game nights.
Yeah,
so I've been doing a lot of shoveling and things of that nature.
Stupid polar vortex. All right. So, I've been playing some things. I played Rivet Wars a couple more times. Really enjoying Rivet Wars a lot. And there's a little bit of tile warpage, but it's going away very quickly, so it's not nearly as bad as I had with Sedition Wars. I'm really enjoying it, but the models are fantastic. I started painting them up. Well, more about that later. Then played lots of Bang the Dice game, which we talked about. Played 3-player High Command. Still enjoying that game quite a bit. And once you players all know what they're doing, it gets really, really good because you start to being very tactical about when you're going to make your move for the center and when you're not. I like that a lot.
That's the War Machine card game, correct?
It is the War Machine deck building game, yeah. And I've got that, and I've also combined it with the Hordes one. So I just have my one War Machine box has a bunch of little deck boxes inside of it that are all the different factions. So I have all 6 factions in there and everything, and it's fun. I like it a lot. Then we were sent a review copy of Euphoria: Build a Better Dystopia. Craig, have you seen this game? Did you see this?
I have seen it, but I have not played it.
It was a Kickstarter game. It's now out in stores. Very cool components. It's a worker placement game, but the workers are dice, so kind of like Kingsburg kind of thing, but a much more complex game than Kingsburg. So a much more, meaty worker placement game. But the theme here is really cool. It's around you're trying to keep your workers skilled but dumb because you're because you're building a better dystopia, which means a world where the workers have no real heart or moral value, or any desire to do anything besides the work. So you're keeping them oppressed essentially, and it's kind of cool because there's all these little theme choices in there to do that. It's really cute, but really nice game. I've played it now 3 times, and every time I break it out, it plays reasonably fast. Love the components, and then Mike brought in his super Kickstarter version, which had actual one of the resources is gold. And in the game, it's a little wooden gold-shaped bricks. But in his super version, it's actually shiny metal gold bricks with little 40 carats stamped on the top or something. Really cool stuff. Really fun game. I like it a lot. I'm going to play more of that. It's fun. Then my new passion, Eclipse, broke out 2 more times.
Yeah.
I got Spaceship Pack 1, I think I mentioned before, which now fixes the whole all the cool ships in there now. Been playing the heck out of that game. Really, really liking it. And that's another game, the more you play it, the better you get. And what I like about it is I know a lot of people complain about the fact that, as you explore the galaxy, you never know what you're going to find. And then it puts you at a disadvantage. But really what ends up happening is I think players have a tendency to either wall themselves in and not connect to each other in the end, or connect too early with a very aggressive opponent. So you got to kind of look your opponents in the eye and decide, do I want to connect now because my galaxy's stinky, and kind of get it going on early? So you got to kind of adjust your play style based on what you get, which I like. It makes you kind of work with what you're dealt. And then, of course, biggest game ever, Craig. I played 2 more games of My Little Pony, the collectible card game.
Wow, why wouldn't you?
And I have finally beaten my 10-year-old daughter at this game. After 6 games, my youngest daughter, who's now 10, was undefeated, and I finally defeated her. So very excited about that milestone. So there you have it. That's what we're playing. What about modeling, Mac?
Oh, goodness. Well, I put together an Inquisitor that I converted up and bought a new lamp so I could paint better. It's got that nice magnifying glass in it. It's doing wonders. But mostly it's all been terrain. Everything from I took an old Jenga set and some plasticard. Yeah, and I used the Jenga blocks to build a kind of a fort that I then used plasticard around to make it look like it was a corn emplacement for my friend. And then I used the 10 box that came in to make a tower, again with plasticard. And then I used a couple of Pringles cans to do a little couple of silos that had blood and skulls in them. And the gag there is someone got skulls in the blood tower and blood in the skulls tower.
And
very
nice.
Yeah, it was cute.
Pringles cans are God's gift to the terraformer.
They are indeed.
They're awesome.
They're the short ones too, so they look perfect.
Nice. That's awesome. How about you, Craig? What have you been modeling?
I have finished my Wild West Exodus Lawmen. Just got a little ink left and a little touch-ups on their base, and they'll all be done. So I'm super excited. I want to pick up some more of them. The Interceptor bike is just awesome. I modeled one of those doing a big wheelie.
Nice.
And I used all of the plastic base toppers. So they're a little bit taller. They all look like really cool display models. And so that was super exciting. And one thing that didn't get played at TempleCon, but everybody talked about wanting to play it, was Firestorm Armada, which, of course, I'm always up for.
Me too.
And so nobody had a mat for it. And then when we were playing the X-Wing game, Christian tossed out his felt mat that he got from an online store. And I was like, wait a minute, this is just paint spattered on fabric. And then I said, wait a minute, I have that awesome line on fleece that makes a perfect table surface. I have modeled tan for my desert tables. I have modeled gray and they come modeled or solid colors. So the very next day I came home from TempleCon, I went to the local fabric store and I got this fleece, which is really cheap. I got it for $6 a yard, and you only need 2 yards for a 6-foot table. And I used a paintbrush. A toothbrush with some white paint on it, just white craft paint. And I just sprayed in really cool galactic patterns. And then I got some spray paint, just random colors. I ended up using tan and a dark blue because you're just going to kind of brush over really lightly, blow the paint across it so it just a little bit dusts down. And it looks really cool, nebulas. It really looks awesome. And the whole thing cost me out of pocket about $13.
Wow.
Nice.
And that the felt fabric is perfect for terrain because it contours to the table perfectly and then sticks there. So it's not shifting around on you. It's really, really cool. I mean, dice roll on it really nicely. The models sit on it really well. So I was really excited to do that. So
have you seen the ones that the guys at Frontline Gaming are making?
I have not.
I brought one home with me from the Las Vegas Open, and it is amazing. It is a 6-foot by 4-foot mouse pad, basically.
So I've heard of those. Yeah.
Super resilient. I had it rolled up for like 2 weeks in the back of my car, and it still rolled out perfectly flat. And it's like printed at 300 DPI, something crazy, like maybe even higher. It's just gorgeous. And I just roll it out on my 6x4, and I suddenly have a cityscape that I can start throwing buildings on.
Oh, that's cool.
Ooh, I want one of those now.
Is it like a city? Yeah, it's like a city base sort of.
But they have different ones, right?
They have a bunch of different ones, and I'm hoping they're doing a Malifaux one soon, that sort of thing. They're just gorgeous.
Nice.
Ooh, looks like they're doing a Kickstarter.
Oh yeah.
They already did.
Oh, they did. Is that where that's coming from?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, their Kickstarter was wildly successful.
Yeah.
People want this thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that. That's not a bad price either.
No, I think it's what, $85, something.
Yeah,
like that?
$85 for a giant mouse pad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
No. I was impressed by the price point they were able to come in at.
Oh, very cool. Yeah,
Very cool.
I've been watching them for a while. So I haven't been painting much, mostly due to video games, which we'll talk about later. But I did get a chance to. So I got my Rivet Wars and I started experimenting with painting them because I'm trying to be as lazy as possible with these guys.
Yeah, here.
The models are beautiful, but I really don't want to. And I like the fact they're on brown bases, and then the models themselves are different colors. If it's for the Blight, they're gray, and if it's for the Allies, they're green. So they're already kind of their core colors. So I figured, well, if I could just sort of dry brush them or something and not even prime them, I know it's cheating like crazy, but it would, kick them up a notch and not have to be too much work. The problem is they're already kind of light shades, and so dry brushing on top of an already light shade doesn't really do much for them. So I experimented, didn't do it. So now the thing is, I probably should ink them, but inking without a base coat is always dangerous trouble.
Yeah.
So I'm either going to ink them or I'm going to dip them or something. I haven't decided yet, but I don't want to get their bases dirty because I kind of like the base color. So I'm still trying to figure out the minimum thing I can do to make them look cooler, basically. Which is a shame. I should probably paint the heck out of them. They deserve it, but
they do deserve it. They look awesome.
But I have too many other models, so
Yeah, you do have a lot.
All those cowboys.
If you want to apply a wash to flat plastic without actually going over the plastic, hit them with some purity seals or any of the matte finish.
Ooh.
It'll adhere, and then you can wash right into it.
Oh, brilliant,
Mack! Because it's basically a clear paint.
Nice. So just a flat matte, and then just hit them clear matte, and then do it. Brilliant. Oh, I'm making notes. Notes are being made. Okay. Matte finish first. Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Great tip.
Yeah.
All right. Brilliant. Okay. On to other geeky goodness. So these are the things. These are like watching movies, reading books, TV shows, whatever other things that are geek related. Mac, how about you? What have you been doing on those fronts there?
The closest thing I've got is I'm catching up on True Detective.
Yeah.
Have you seen the show? It's amazing.
I have not. What's it like?
Well, at first I thought it was just going to be one of these kind of procedural cop shows, but it had Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. So I went, it's got to be at least decent, right? Those two guys aren't going to do a show. I don't even know if it's Showtime or AMC or it's some cable network. I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a shot. I've run out of things on Hulu to watch. I'm not 100% because we're only 5 episodes in, but I think it's a Cthulhu story.
Oh, really? Holy crud.
Ooh.
They mentioned the King in Yellow a bunch.
Ooh. Huh. Right.
Which is not technically Cthulhu, but Cthulhu co-opted it. Right. So it's all about that Satanism, like King in Yellow kind of thing. And I'm really getting into it.
Oh, I'll check that out.
Sounds cool.
Very cool.
And I finally convinced my fiance to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, that's an achievement for that.
Sounds like an indoctrination in process.
Yes.
You'd think she loves Firefly. I'm like, well, you should watch Buffy.
Course. You'd
like it. And she was like, well, I don't know. I watched one episode and I didn't really care for it. And then she just finished watching the Merlin show, and she was complaining that Anthony Stewart Head wasn't in any more shows. And I'm like, I've been trying to get you to watch Buffy. Oh, was he in that? So finally I got her to.
Nice. So how was Merlin? Was it worth the trip? I have not seen it, but I know it's on Netflix.
I've only watched the first, I want to say 3 seasons.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
Okay. I'll check that out.
There's nothing in it that's, going to revolutionize the way you watch TV. It's not, it's not Doctor Who, but it's still really,
is it like
a solid show.
Is it like Herc and Xena quality or a little step up from that kind of thing?
Oh, definitely a step up.
Oh, good. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, let's not diss Herc and Xena, okay?
Well, okay. I should. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, Craig. So not too long ago, I thought my daughters both are really into.
I think you did mention it.
Yeah, they're into the Percy Jackson stuff, right? So I'm like, well, they like the Zeus, Greek gods and everything. They must love Hercules. So I watched episode 1 of Hercules with them on Netflix.
Yeah.
Oh my
you did.
God,
I think
was
you
that a bad
mentioned it
show.
in achievements before.
It does not. Yeah, it does not stand up, unfortunately.
No. But still, it gave us a lot of joy in the day.
It did.
It's a little bit like Walker, Texas Ranger.
I deny that ever stood up.
Well,
but that's just me.
It's got Chuck Norris in it, so it's already got a beard.
At least it starts off with one fist in a beard.
Right, exactly. Anything else, Mac?
Not really show-wise.
Okay. How about any
just-
books? And no books lately?
Oh, I'm barely literate. Are you kidding me?
Just too
well,
busy writing to read.
I'm desperately just waiting for Doors of Stone, the next one in the King Killer Chronicles.
Oh,
Name
yes.
of the Wind.
Yeah.
And of course, I think in next month or the month after, we've got another Dresden Files novel. So right now, I'm just kind of sitting, waiting for the books.
That sounds good.
I did read a sci-fi novel, and it's terrible that I've forgotten the name of it, but it was pretty great. Basically, the stars disappear, and no one knows why, and it turns out that some device has wrapped the Earth in this like temporal net.
Ooh.
And time is flowing outside of our planet significantly faster than on Earth. And they do the math, and it looks like the Earth will be the universe or the sun will expand and envelop our planet in 50 years our time.
Wow.
And so we suddenly, we have to start figuring out how to figure this out. So they start, of course, sending people into space to handle it, because up there they can get thousands of years of research done in like a blink of an eye on Earth and all kinds of craziness.
Oh, cool.
That's cool.
And you don't remember what that's called?
I checked it out from the library. Spin. I think it's called Spin.
Spin. All right.
Oh man, I might be wrong on that one. Now I got to Google it.
Oh, geez. Well, send emails to Mack Martin.
Well, Spin is a sci-fi novel that won the Hugo.
All right, maybe it is it. That sounds like a Hugo winning story.
That's it. Yeah, Spin. That's
there you
it.
go.
Yay!
Good. Nice. Well played, sir.
Yes, there you go. An opaque black membrane.
There you go. Insane in the membrane. Craig, what have you been reading, watching?
What have I been reading, watching, doing? Well, I'm getting super excited because, of course, our friend Ross Watson, behind the accursed RPG background setting for Savage Worlds, and we're finally putting together a game of that. So I'm super excited. I am going to be a Dhampir, which is like half vampire.
Is that a wet vampire?
Yes, it's a wet vampire. It's a moist vampire, actually, not really wet.
All right, fair enough.
And so very excited about that. Also working, Dave from the Nerd Herders podcast is going to be GMing it, and I'm working with him so that he can use my Dwarven Forge dungeon tiles.
There you go.
To some effect during the adventure. So that's all going to be next Tuesday. So I'm very, very excited about that, and I'm all back in a Savage World character creation and really enjoying myself. I decided to take a break from Joe Ledger.
All right.
Still good stuff. Actually, I just finished the book, The Mask of the Assassin, I think, or something like that. And there were Dhampir in that book. So that's kind of why I was like, ooh, I can be a half vampire. And I just read about the half vampires. I decided not to go right into the next book, mainly because the whole world and the secret society thing and the onions and layers and ogres and layers and onions. And
right.
I can't imagine one more layer of global conspiracy. We're going to try to destroy / take over / change the world is existing underneath all the other ones that they've already completely conquered and killed.
All right.
So I thought I'd take a break. So I'm reading, I had it on my wish list, Brian Sanderson's Steel Heart book, which is awesome. I'm not a big comic book guy, but this book is considered to be like a comic book in novel form. And the basic premise is that something appears in the sky over Earth, nobody knows what it is, and then a year later people start developing superpowers.
Ooh.
And nobody knows psychologically whether you get a superpower and then it does something, having this superpower does something to you so you become evil, or if whatever's giving the superpowers is only giving it to evil people, but there are no superheroes, they're only supervillains.
Tell me the name of this again. I want to read it.
It is awesome. It's called Steel Heart.
Steel Heart. Okay, I'm writing that down.
Nice.
And and Brian Sanderson, of course, is the guy who took over for Jordan with the Wheel of Time.
Have you read Soon I Will Be Invincible?
Yeah, I have. I love that book. It was fantastic. Yeah, really good.
The audiobook is amazing too.
It was, yes. I listened to it on Audible, actually. It was fantastic. The voice actor was great, and the whole premise of the told from the evil guy's point of view was great.
So I'm really enjoying it, and the book revolves around the most powerful. They call them epics, and it revolves around the most powerful epic in Steelheart. Is that what? Yeah, Steelheart, all one word. and his name is Steelheart. And the most fortunate epics get multiple superpowers, and Steelheart has a bunch of them. And one of them is he's completely impervious to anything; nothing can hurt him. And one law of these epics is that they have to have some weakness. It's like built into the code of whatever's giving them these powers. So there's a small group of people who would make it their job to go find these guys and kill the most evil ones. And so it's all about this guy who's trying to kill Steelheart because he killed his dad in the beginning of the book. And when the kid was 10 years old, he saw this thing happen at the very beginning of this whole thing and happening in history. And Steelheart was like cut on the face, just a little cut that bled. And that's the only wound he's ever received. So this guy's like, I have to recreate that event, and that will somehow show me his weakness. So there's all kinds of really cool stuff going on in the book. I'm really, really enjoying it. The narrator is really cool. So I got that on Audible, of course.
Nice.
Actually, it came onto my radar during one of their sales.
Yes.
And their sales, of course, are going all the time. Russ, if any of our listeners are left who have not yet taken advantage of Audible, what do you think they should do?
Well, they should head to our website, thed6generation.com, and click on the Audible ad on the right-hand side. And that will take them to a special Audible offer to D6G listeners, which will get you 30 days free trial and a free credit, which you can use towards pretty much any audiobook in their collection. And even if you cancel before you're at the end of your 30 days and pay nothing, you get to keep that audiobook forever. So what's not to like? You support the show, you get a great book, and hey, who knows, you might even like the Audible service like the rest of us, because once you've joined in, you're going to love it.
It's like a cult. You'll never get out.
Fantastic value, and you get all those other deals going on all the time. And I've been blasting through books right now. In fact, Craig, I don't even know this. I've been listening to the David Weber books right now. I just got through On Basilisk Station. Fantastic. Nice. I got through that again. Of course, I read it a long time ago. Back through it again. Now I'm listening to A Queen's Honor, because, of course, as we learned, the first Honor Harrington movie is going to be based on Queen's Honor, so I couldn't wait to listen to that again.
Yep.
Great book. Really fantastic. Almost done with that. But now I just found out that Skull Island Expeditions, the publishing house from Privateer Press, have their books now appearing on Audible.
Some of them, not
all of them. So after Queen's Honor, I'm going to get Into the Storm, which is the Signar novel.
Yeah.
That's a 7-hour book on Audible. Some of the other ones are on there. The one from Chris is on there, Convergence, and there's a lot of other good stuff on there too. Also, the latest David Weber novel that's not Honor Harrington. Was it Army? What's it called, Craig?
I don't know.
There's a brand new David Weber book set in a really cool sort of alternate timeline where they look like it's almost like Leviathan, like flying steamship stuff. It's sort of a whole new thing. Yeah. Anyway, it's out. It's on Audible. So look for David Weber over there. So yeah.
Now the cool thing about Into the Storm for me, because I wouldn't normally go into a book about the Iron Kingdoms. It's written by one of my favorite authors, Larry Correia, who does all of the Monster Hunter International.
Yeah.
And it's narrated by the guy who narrates all of the Joe Ledger books.
Right.
So it kind of brings a lot of the really big names from fantasy literature or sci-fi fantasy literature together in this project. So that's a really, really cool get for Privateer Press. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool.
And speaking of Honor Harrington, as longtime listeners will know, the company Evergreen Studios that's making the movie, their first movie just came out to not great reviews. It was Walking with Dinosaurs, and I wanted to see it. I wanted to support them, and I really wanted to see the special effects, because this is the first movie that they're using all their brand new, we're the only ones who have this technology. And I will tell you that the story was a bit lacking. But the special effects were amazing.
Oh, cool.
The best dinosaur special effects, bar none, I have ever seen. It really looked like it was somehow they had just filmed real dinosaurs interacting with the environment, interacting with each other, with water, with snow, with dirt, with fire. It was really, really crazy. So I'm even more excited about the Honor Harrington books now.
Yeah, very cool.
And finally, what I'm reading is The Ninth Circle, which is the next Tour of the Merrimack book by R.M. Melick, which is those the books where the Earth is all united and United Nations are everybody's all nice and happy, except America is the only one who remained as their own sovereign nation, and they're the only ones who actually maintain an armed space fleet. And you've got, of course, the Roman Empire has reconstituted itself. So it's good pulpy stuff. And this is the next book in that series. Then the series ended with Strength and Honor, which was I think it was the 4th book. So this is the 5th book. It sort of starts a new arc. And it starts off a little weak. It's got that thing where it's focusing on multiple characters, and some you love and some, or at least I didn't care for. So I was like, oh God, not these guys again. But then the cool stuff would start up again. And I'm at 52%. And so I'm loving it now. And last thing is really cool technology thing that I'm sure everyone on the planet knew but me is I finally downloaded the Kindle app on my phone.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And so now I can read wherever I go. So let's say I get stuck at the hospital for 6 hours while someone's doing tests and stuff. I can read the book that I forgot at home. And then I come home and it automatically syncs back up with my phone, so I don't have to worry about it. It's really ridiculously convenient.
Have you tried it with WhisperSync with Audible too?
I have not, only because I don't want to read what I'm listening to.
So it does that. So like if you, because Audible is an Amazon company. So basically you can actually be in the hospital reading the book on your phone and then get back in your car and flip over to your Audible app, and it'll pick up where you last read on the page and picks the audio up there. You get back home, you can flip back, bring your tablet out, and it'll bring back to the page wherever the audio book ended. So you can
now, the only negative about that, though, is you have to buy both versions.
Yes, but I think
with the Kindle, you'd buy the Kindle version, and you can just access it from different different machines.
Yep.
So that was cool. I was super excited about that.
Cool.
And that's me. What about you, Russ?
All right, well, let's see. Well, I talked about books already. Video game front, I'm still enjoying the heck out of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Mac, have you seen this game?
I have been forcing myself. I have Assassin's Creed 1.
Yeah.
And I haven't finished it.
Yep.
And I don't know if I can just skip right to 4, but 4 is the reason I thought Assassin's Creed 1 would look cool.
Yes.
And the minute they went, and this one has pirates, I went, oh, well I don't want to play all the ones in between.
You are a ninja pirate, essentially, so just keep that in mind, which is both awesomes together. And you don't really need to have played the first 3 to play the 4th. There are some little references there that are just good for everybody, but you can just jump right in and get into it. And in fact, to be honest, I played 1 and 2. I did not play. I played some of 3. 4 I'm in love with because I'm a big Navy combat guy, and I'm just having a blast with it. It just does so much stuff right. I mean, you can siege forts, you can go whale hunting, you can, it's basically like Sid Meier's Pirates in fully 3D, but instead of dancing with ladies on shore, you assassinate their husbands. So basically, it's a win-win-win.
This all sounds fantastic.
It's a no-brainer, pretty much. Now, if you did not like the playstyle of Assassin's Creed, you probably this won't sell you because at its core, it's still Assassin's Creed on the land and stuff. But the naval combat is a lot of fun. So
I didn't mind Assassin's Creed. I actually quite enjoyed it. I got torn away from it though by the
jump back in. You'll be fine.
Yeah, the Star Wars one, the Force Unleashed series, tore me away from it.
Yeah. So, then the Titanfall beta just started. So Titanfall is if you're a video game fan, you've probably heard of this. It is probably the most hyped video game coming on the Xbox One. It's not scheduled to. Oh, go ahead, Mac.
I played that one this weekend.
Yeah, did you get the beta? Yeah, I was.
My friend had it, and so we were over at his place playing 40K, and that's what we did in between rounds.
What'd you think?
I was a little sad to find out there wasn't a single player mode, but that did not stop me from wanting to spend the, $500-ish to get the Xbox One and that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like imagine you're a jump pack trooper on the ground, right? And you can leap up, and when you're in the air, you can then jump towards a wall, run along the wall, jump off the wall, jetpack, run another wall, run along. You have all kinds of different guns, including like sniper pistols, which automatically lock onto targets, and you have all kinds of cool weapons. But then as if that wasn't cool enough in this high-tech world, then add in the fact that you can call in a Titan, which is basically a giant battle mech that falls out of the sky, can literally squish somebody on the way down. Your mech will follow you around with his own AI and defend you, or you can get near it. He'll pick you up with his hand and stick you into his chest, and now you're piloting the mech. When you're killing guys, you can actually reach in their chest, rip the pilots out, smash them on the ground. It's just, Tell them about rodeoing. Oh, so rodeoing is basically when you jump into the air, as one of your jump pack guys, if you land on the back of a Titan, you can grab onto it. If it's a friendly Titan, you'll be riding under his shield generator, and you can then fire your weapons off his back. And every infantry, when you're in pilot mode, they call it, when you're basically on foot, you have a weapon that kills Titans, and you also have weapons that kill anti-infantry. But then what you can do is if you jump on the back of an enemy mech, Titan, you can then rip off their panel and start shooting into it, and then they've got to back scratch you. They've either got to eject and take care of you. But then as you get higher levels, you can get different gear on your Titan, like electric gas that like radiates out and kills the guy off. It's just so good. It's like a combination, very very fast play style. It's like a combination of, if you're a gamer, take 1 part Star Siege Tribes, stir in some Mech Warrior, and add a dash of Virtual On, because the mechs are really really fast. They're like anime speed Titans. Just awesome. Really, really good. I think it's going to redefine what multiplayer is. And this is by Respawn, which is the studio that originally bought, wasn't it, the original Infinity Ward? Isn't that these guys? I think so. I forget. But go ahead.
What's
Matt.
really cool about the game is they're doing the campaign, which actually tells a story.
Right.
So you have a story mode multiplayer campaign that you engage in, which is brilliant.
Yeah, my understanding is the multiplayer campaign is a cool story. There's cutscenes and everything. But what happens is you're actually playing 6-on-6 against the players, but there's also a lot of AI running around. So it feels like it's army versus army, but then what ends up happening is the players are like the heroes and the grunts, the AI controls everything else. But then like in each campaign mode, the winning team, the side that wins, goes on to the next element of the story. The losing team, from what I understand, will switch to the other side and have to play the map again until they win to advance. So you want to fight the same team over and over again. If you keep losing, you'll just fight newbies until you can advance, go to the next level. It's really cool, and it's going to tell the whole story that way. They've got different kinds of escort missions and all kinds of craziness.
You can still advance. When you lose, you have an option to make it to the chopper, basically.
Right.
They do a drop ship, and if you can get enough of your guys to the drop ship, you'll actually advance to the next story.
Oh, that's right.
Because you lived.
Yep. Yeah, it's so cool. It's just really well done. Really well done. So that's my video gaming. Then I have 2 more things. I've been watching the Olympics, enjoying, I'm enjoying the Olympics. I'm not really enjoying the coverage, but that's the kind of par for the course. But I was able to watch some curling, and I've decided curling is a great sport to watch as a gamer. I think it's got the best metagame in sports because you really see them outthinking each other and shooting certain ways. It's like watching a really, really competitive board game, or like Sorry Sliders, essentially. It's really, really, I don't know why I like curling. I just do. I can't explain.
Oh, I love curling. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, it's very entertaining. And finally, I saw the ultimate geek movie lately. I saw the Lego movie. Have you guys seen this yet?
I can't wait to see it.
Oh,
I've been meaning. Yeah, I'm going to see it tomorrow night, probably.
You really got to see it. It is fantastically funny. If you've ever held a Lego and played with the toys, you need to see this movie, especially if you grew up in the 80s, because 80s Spaceship Guy is just awesome. But also, it actually takes a left turn at just completely crazy, silly movie, and suddenly, all of a sudden, it's like it's got a Toy Story level of connection eventually, where after you see this movie, you'll never look at your Legos the same way again. Really?
I'm a little concerned that the Lego movie is going to be a better DC Universe movie than the eventual Batman versus Superman.
That's arguable. There are all kinds of great Lego cameos in this film. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but the heroes are only part of that thing. So really great movie. I think you'll love it. So go check that out.
Cool.
Is that achievements?
I believe that's achievements.
There you go.
Is that all we did?
That's just it, man.
You're listening to the D6 generation. Born to game.
It's a wolf pack, which doesn't make any sense at all because we're going to talk about Lone Wolf.
Lone Wolf!
Right. The non-wolf pack. He's like that Lone Ranger of wolves. So our friends at Lone Wolf Development, they make the absolute best gaming software, period. Bar none. Just not even.
Absolutely.
Don't even worry about it.
There's not even competition.
Well, there is, but none of them do it as well, really, to be honest.
That's what I mean.
Army Builder, fantastic for your miniature war games. You got your Hero Lab for your RPGs. They're even doing.
Now,
yeah, go ahead.
What I mean, you've got RealmWorks.
Of course, you got RealmWorks.
RealmWorks coming out, which is the game master's answer to everything.
Yes,
managing your campaign, planning out your world, recording your encounters so that you know what happened where and what the characters know. It even interfaces with your players so that they only know the things they know. They can only see the things they see. I mean, it really does everything for you. while at the same time maintaining that face-to-face RPG feel. It's an amazing piece of software, really, and creates an index for you as you go. It really it does more than some game designers do when they're designing a game.
No, and the thing about this Lone Wolf that's amazing, and I really like about them is their interaction with their users is fantastic.
Absolutely.
They just had a Google Hangout. We'll be doing some of those ourselves pretty soon too. They just had a great Google Hangout where you could actually get online with their developers and talk about how to do Army Builder data file authoring, which is, for those who don't know, Army Builder. The reason Army Builder can support any miniature war game is that anybody can go in and write the files, essentially the rules for building armies in any miniature war game. And so gamers across the globe have done this, and they put them in a library, and you can download them yourselves into your Army Builder and build your army list without even having to understand that. But if you've got a new game, let's say you're a game developer, or you're just someone who's a really big fan of a game that's brand new and no one's built the data files for it, they'll help you guys learn that. They'll even have these great Google Hangouts where you can ask questions and get inside tips on the best way and tricks and tips. That's what I'm trying to say. To get that done as well. So great stuff there. They just had the big Mutants and Masterminds, 3rd edition update. The Hero Lab encounter builder now is in beta for Pathfinder, so you can actually build your encounters for you based on some factoids. Just great stuff. If you're it doesn't matter what kind of gamer you are. That's the cool thing. And don't forget Card Vault. We even talked about Card Vault, which is a way to track your collectible games, whether it's
for any collectible game. So miniatures, cards, anything. Yeah,
you want to know your collection, want to know the probability. If you build your deck a certain way, what are you going to get that card? It's all built in this system. So head on over to wolflair.com and just get the absolute best software in gaming. And now, what's in the news? With a very special thanks shout out to our very first patron, Jeremy D. Thanks to you and to all those who've come after you. And now the news. Up first, Fantasy Flight Games has announced Descent Heroes and Monsters collections. This is actually, Wakeland was just talking about this with some friends the other day. Yeah, I was. About how if you are a current Descent player, you just jumped on the bandwagon with Descent 2nd Edition, and you look longingly at these old school Descent players who have all the plastic from the original Descent and got that little upgrade card box so they can use their entire massive number of models from their first Descent in the second Descent edition of the game. Well, worry no longer, because now you can. These Heroes and Monster collections will be new packs that bring back the monsters and heroes from the original Descent, so you can play them in Descent 2nd Edition. What's particularly nice is that these are all filled with new artwork and new sculpts for the models. Oh, no, that's right, Wakeland. Now you've got to rebuy them if you want the list. I don't think I can do it. Well, Wakeland's painted most of his, or some of his, so he probably won't rebuy them, but if you wanted to, you could. Also included are mini quests that can be played individually or included into your campaign via rumor cards. In other news, Assassin's Creed is getting a board game. That's right, a board game called Assassin's Creed Arena from Cryptozoic. It's a Cryptozoic game, so guess what? It features a lot of cards. Nothing wrong with that. And it looks like the theme here is in Assassin's Creed Arena, players compete to uncover the best targets for assassination, but you can't go for the kill until those pesky guards are out of the way. So you got to wait till either the guards move out of the way or take those guards out first. Combat's all card-driven, so no dice. And you're going to use your event cards to keep track of things. And event cards set the theme, and then you got to have a hand of cards to do things, but your hand of cards is also going to equate to your life, your health points as well. So it sounds pretty interesting. If you're an Assassin's Creed fan, you might want to stay on top of that. Also, cavalry previews of the new new cavalry models coming out for War Machine and Hordes. Actually, War Machine in this case, and we're talking about Signar in particular. The new mounted striker model has been revealed, along with some other cav models as well. So head over to Privateer Press for all that hotness. This is sort of an interesting bit of news. A survey was done by the folks over at, Joystick was reporting it, but The Verge and some other sites have it as well. And that is that a survey group, Swerve, S-W-R-V-E, surveyed a bunch of people who buy in-app purchases in mobile games, and it turns out that 50% of the revenue from in-app purchases all come from 0.15% of mobile gamers. So it's a very small audience, which means that these games that are making lots and lots of money on in-app purchases are really coming from a very small market, which means they're competing for the same group of people. Sort of interesting. Other big announcements here. Oh, this is kind of a big deal. Warner Brothers has leaked or announced or something that they are working on a Minecraft film with the developer Notch. And it turns out that Notch has confirmed indeed, Mojang, of course, Notch is the guy who founded it, his nickname. Of course, they are indeed doing it. And in addition to that, which is kind of exciting, the folks that are behind the Lego movie, the recent smash hit Lego movie, are also going to be involved in the Minecraft film as well. So that's pretty exciting, a little ways out. But speaking of big film and movie deals, we should probably mention, and Wakelin, you were just about a year off on your prediction about Netflix being the big water cooler shows people talk about. I know, right? Oh, House of Cards and Orange is the New Black. Well, now, Marvel Television, ABC, have announced the largest television deal in history to take place in New York. And it's going to feature the folks from Marvel Comics, so folks like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage in a brand new Netflix series. So that's pretty exciting. These superheroes are going to, of course, take place in New York, so that's why it's a big deal. It's going to be putting a lot of jobs in New York. And the series will start to roll out in 2015, so not too far away. So big stuff coming to Netflix. I'm very excited to see a film with Luke Cage and Iron Fist in it. That's exciting. And that's what's in the news.
Hi, and now it's time for us to talk about our friends over at Winged Hussar Publishing.
Exactly.
Russ, what's up with Winged Hussar Publishing right now?
Our friends at Winged Hussar, the thing I remember about them is when they first joined us as a sponsor, which was fantastic, love the fact that they're supporting us, keeping us going. They did this from the day of their inception. Good old Vince over there is like, hey, I want to start out by promoting my new business on your podcast. We're like, you guys are awesome. So it was great they did that. And they've already, the thing that's been fun to watch them grow, they've gone from purely historical novels and books and summaries and battle reports from Julius Caesar and in their own words and Frederick the Great, all this great stuff, to now works of fiction, including written by our own Craig Gallant, published by Winged Hussar Publishing.
And others.
Yeah, like the great books on Jesse James and Wild West Exodus. And they've got a new fantasy line now, right, Craig?
Yep, they do.
Exactly right. So head on over there. Go to Winged Hussar
the
Publishing.
Clan.
Yeah, wingedhussarpublishing.com. And the great thing, too, is if you're looking for one of these hot books, especially one of Craig's books, and you have trouble finding one for whatever reason because they're sold out on Amazon or they're moving quickly or they're not, you can't find a hard copy, all the digital copies are available for download from Winged Hussar Publishing as well.
Actually, both hard copies and digital copies of everything are available at the website.
You definitely want to do it through that website because if you put in the code D6G, you get a little savings there as well.
Oh,
so
15%.
Don't miss out on that either. So head on over to wingedhussarpublishing.com.
Winged Hussar!
You're listening to the D6 generation. Born to game.
Hey, welcome back. We promised at the top of the show, we've got Mack Martin on the hizzy, on the phone. Anyway, and Mac, we thought it would be great.
I hope he's not on the hizzy. It's freezing up there.
It is cold up on the hizzy.
There's like 3 feet of snow up there.
What's the temperature like where you are, Mac? What state are you in right now?
But now I'm confused. I thought the hizzy was the toilet.
It might be. I don't claim to actually know.
This is New Hampshire.
Right.
There may be 3 feet of snow on the hizzy.
No, I'm in California. I'm a little bit up the hill in Placerville, but not in quite mountain territory. So we get a little flurry of dusting of snow here and there, but nothing.
Yes, that's what we got today, a dusting. We got a dusting that dumped 2 inches in 1 hour. That's the kind of dusting we got today.
Nice. Well, hey, in fairness to my snow cred, I did spend 2 years in Minnesota or 3 years in Minnesota and another 3 years in Chicago. So I've walked my share of uphill. You did.
Okay, your weather bona fides have been established, Mac. Now let's talk about the gaming stuff.
Nice. All right. So
see how I did that?
That's a nice segue.
All right, Mac. So we're well done there. So first, for those folks, those 3 guys out there who might not be familiar with your work, can you just give us like the 30-second resume of some of the major projects you've worked on in the past? Even prior to your Wyrd
projects,
days.
The 40K roleplay system, Dust Warfare, and Malifaux would be the big highlights.
Nice. So how is life at Wyrd? Last time we talked to you, you just sort of jumped in there and we're starting out with some of the Malifaux stuff. And how are things going on now that you're a Wyrd veteran, as you would say?
Great. I think Malifaux Second Edition is out in most people's hands,
Yeah.
and that's clipping along very nicely. And then Through the Breach is on schedule. On schedule with our delayed version of it. But as far as I know, they're getting stuff into the warehouse, and we're prepping to ship stuff out, and it's going to be great.
So let's talk about some of that stuff. So when we last had you on the show, we were talking really about you were still knee deep in the Malifaux 2 beta, and it was still. We talked about some of the things you were doing and your interactions with the beta testers and how you're cautiously optimistic, but you never really know. Now it's been out for a while. The final product is in folks' hands, or at least the initial rulebook is. Were you happy with how the launch went? I mean, how did it go?
Well, you never know quite how it went until it's been out for a little bit. But I ran a tournament at the Las Vegas Open. I just, was like, I'm going to run up a Malifaux tournament so I actually can talk to the people who play in it and see how it's working and that sort of thing. And we actually had some new players jumping in. They weren't having to look at the rule book too much.
Nice.
They only had a couple questions. Every question that anyone asked me, I was able to go to the rule book, and right there on the page was a very clear answer that no one questioned. It was just like, okay, that's where the answer was.
Yeah.
So, and I only had to do that maybe 4 or 5 times in a 3-round tournament. I think that says a lot.
Nice. That's great. I know locally, I've been playing quite a bit. I know a lot of local fans are really Malifaux's got a lot of love right now in our group. And,
and
there's
a lot going on.
I think universally been praised in the new edition. I mean, there's the odd quibble here and there, but I think for the most part, everybody's really, really pleased with it.
Well, no one's going to like every game, every aspect of every game, right? Like, there's even things about it that I had to, we had to make some capitulation to reality where I wish we didn't have to. But even with me, there's a few things in there where it's like, I wish we could have done that a different way, but really just not logically able to do.
Now, what was the most surprising thing, now that the majority of it's out there and people are using it, what was the most surprising part of the whole process?
That's a tough one. When it comes to the actual playtest, I think what surprised me the most was how ingrained and dedicated the fan base is. Mm-hmm. But now that it's actually out, I think what's surprising me the most is how many of the players who quit have started to come back and kind of come around to it.
Cool.
Which normally when you switch editions, you do not see that happen.
Yeah. Very cool. What are you most excited about sharing with folks next? I mean, is it the avatars? Is it something else? What's the next big shoe to drop, you think, in that area of Malifaux?
Well, Justin's working hard on the avatars, which I think he's got the cards out now, and they're being tested.
Yep.
Those are obviously going to be very complicated because they're big, scary models, but they have to be expensive. And
can you give us a quick teaser? Can you give us a quick teaser on how they work? I mean, or does everybody, is it pretty straightforward for everybody to understand how they work now?
Basically, the avatar is an upgrade, and you take 2 cards. One is how you manifest, and the other one is the actual upgrade. And when you hit the manifest, I think you either flip the card over or there's another effect on it that only happens post-manifest. And when that happens, you swap out your model to visually show that they've changed, and now they have access to more of that avatar upgrade.
Now, can they flip back in the middle of the game to non-avatar mode, or once you flip, you flip?
I believe once you flip, you're flipped.
Okay.
That may have changed. I don't know where Justin's at in the testing.
Okay.
Frankly, I've been knee deep in Through the Breach.
Yeah.
Getting that out the door. That Justin's been carrying the heavy load there, so I can't really speak with too much confidence because he needs to make the changes he's made.
Yeah.
And I mean, I trust him. I know it's good, but what we started with and where he's at now may be very different.
Great. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Through the Breach, because one of our patrons there, Jason S, wanted to know how the status of that is. How's Through the Breach going for you guys?
Well, the status hasn't really changed since we mentioned a couple months, or about a month ago, I think, maybe a little more, that we're aiming for near the end of first quarter to actually have it into the Kickstarter's hands, and then into stores after that. Obviously, they get fulfilled first.
Right.
I just today finished up with some of the little bits and bobs, and they're now it's more a matter of Georgia getting, that's where our warehouse is, getting everything in from all the different things that are going out to all the people and organizing the packs and starting to ship. And I don't know how long that takes. That's all warehouse stuff that can meet their own delays, and they have their own process.
Sure.
So it's clipping along, though. It is just as it's been making that progress.
Very cool. Very cool. What are you most excited for people to see in Through the Breach?
Well, actually, next week, or maybe even starting tomorrow, I'll be laying out the very first Penny Dreadful, which is what we've got for our adventures. Kind of that pre-written adventure, but it's not like the ones you've seen before. They're more like a snippet of a location, a place in Malifaux in a certain moment in critical time, and it's more about all the things that are happening there and how the players interact with it. Less about, this happens, then they go over here and solve this. There's in this example, this is the town of Innocence. They've got they know that they're going to be attacked by Neverborn fairly soon, but they've also got a mayoral race coming up, and it's all about backing a mayor or not. The players might not even back the same ones, and it's very complex, and we're working very hard to make Through the Breach much more of a literary experience. There's cool. Theme, there's symbolism, there's all these little things tucked away in there, and hopefully you're going to walk away with feeling like you've role played through some literature.
Oh, very cool. Well, that's awesome. That brings us up to speed on your current and nearly complete projects there. But as you hinted to earlier in the show, you are working on a brand new project over there at Wyrd.
The inquiring minds want to know.
Craig, I think it's important to note that as a game designer for a game company, you're always working on 3 or 4 projects.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah, you're always working on a bunch. I've got some Evil Baby Orphanage expansion stuff sitting somewhere ready to go. Got to bring it home, get some art. It's time to get a new EVO expansion out, that sort of thing. So you're always you're always juggling 2 or 3 projects. That's just the nature of the job. But the thing I'm excited about is I'm getting to start work on a army-sized war game called Ruined Planet.
Red Planet?
Ruined Planet.
Ruined Planet.
Ruined Planet. Is this
That's
a scoop?
our working title.
Wait.
Well,
army-sized war game. So how would you define army size?
Dun, dun,
dun. Anywhere between 30 or 40 models for a more elite squad, sometimes as few as 3 if you're certain factions, all the way up to maybe about 100, 150 models on the table.
Nice.
Wow,
that is exciting news.
Well, it depends on the faction you go with and that sort of thing. And it's all very, very early, so we're just now getting sketch work done and that sort of thing. And who knows what the future holds? We may not end up coming out with it. I've worked on several miniatures games that never actually saw print because sometimes you just they don't fit into the schedule, that sort of thing. And this is not one of the things we're keen to not do is push back Malifaux or change Malifaux. Right. I know a lot of people ask me, well, when is Malifaux going to do an army game? And I'm like, we're not going to do a Malifaux army game. If we want to do an army game, it's a new IP because Malifaux is skirmish. That's the point. We're not just going to try and make trick you into buying more models or force you to have to because the game is escalating. I think we saw that with 2nd edition where we changed the point totals without upping the number of models. Right.
That's very cool. So are you pretty confident though that Ruined Planet is? I mean, you don't know for sure if and when it'll be ready. But it sounds like if Wyrd's comfortable with you talking about it a little bit, that they're reasonably confident in the concept and the idea behind the game.
Oh yeah, we're confident that there's a lot to it that we like and we want to see it happen. We're very passionate about it, but we also are realists. But I'm fairly confident that it's will someday see the light of day, if not very soon, depending on 1,000 whirling bits and bobs in the sky. But it's just a lot of fun to get to build another one of these games because you get to do some tiny alpha testing, you get to mock up some of the armies and that sort of thing. And this one I'm building from the ground up to be very streamlined, very focused on competitive play, so that there's a lot of focus on balance between the factions.
Oh, nice.
And obviously we do open betas, so when it comes time for me to actually dial in that balance issue, we can just do an open beta for it, which would be great. This
dovetails into something one of our listeners, Mark D. We mentioned to our patrons that you would be coming on the show, Mac, and so I asked.
Are we not asking any more questions about Ruined Planet?
No, we're coming in. I'm bringing it home.
Okay, I'm just curious. Okay,
Mark wanted to know. I think this will dovetail in nicely. He wanted to know about specifically the Wyrd design process and how do you guys go from sort of concept to the game table. So can you kind of describe sort of how the genesis of Ruined Planet came to be and what you guys are doing to get it from that concept to something playable?
Well, Ruined Planet is a little unique because it actually doesn't follow our usual process.
Oh, okay.
what happened is I got to the company about a year and a half ago, and I was, brought in to do the role-playing game, and then I, started working on the miniatures game. But in the process of working on the role-playing game, Eric, our boss, mentioned that, we'd kind of like to do a bigger war game and something maybe hard sci-fi, totally different than Malifaux.
Nice.
And I was like, yes, can we do that now? I would like to do that now. And I have been chomping at the bit to do a hard sci-fi war game for so long. And finally, this Christmas, we had the week off for Christmas, and Christmas Day, I went and spent with my family and opened presents and did the whole thing. The rest of the time, I wrote 16 hours a day.
Wow.
And it was just, I wanted to see Rune Planet happen so bad that, I was testing, I was building, and right now I have the rule book and 2 faction books done so that I can actually test it.
Wow.
And cool. I literally did that over Christmas break. I just couldn't stop myself.
So Mack, is the vision for this, it sounds like you're cranking on the rules, but is the vision for the background material and the fluff and the story arc, is that you also, or does someone else have that vision and you're cranking on some rules to go along with it? How's that working?
Eric had a lot of the core concepts for what he wanted to see us do, and then I'm filling in a lot of the gaps. One of the factions is the United Worlds of Soul, which is basically the remnants of America that have fled to orbit in the wake of the pandemic. And so I'm filling in a lot about their society and their culture because they're orbital and because they don't have a lot of mining. They use radiation weapons and that sort of thing. Oh, cool. They use very few bullets, except the only projectile weapon they have is a micro nuke launcher, and that's it. Nice. And even that they use very sparingly. They're much more likely to hit you with an orbital Higgs disruptor or a high impact ion laser sort of thing.
I'm already gathering from the names of your weapons that this is really hard sci-fi.
Very hard sci-fi.
Nice.
The Higgs disruptor is basically a disintegrator. It disrupts the things that hold your molecules
exactly
together.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. So oh man, I got so many questions now for you, Craig. Jump in with one here while I gather my thoughts.
Just out of curiosity, Mack, can you tell us roughly how many factions you would hope to be launching with?
I'm not exactly certain. Right now, I've got the sketches for 6 or 7. I've done 2. But launching is totally different than what's in my head. So, and I think a lot of that would be based on a variety of issues.
Now, what's the second faction in your head that you've worked out so far?
Oh, the pandemic. This is a bit of a giveaway. For the last couple of years, during every interview or any video thing I've done, on the whiteboard behind me has been a picture of a cube that I drew, and question is, what is the box? Where has the box come from? That sort of thing. And that's answered by the pandemic.
Oh, cool. So are they the Borg, if they're a giant cube?
No. Much more like an alien super virus.
Ooh, nice.
So it's your zombie apocalypse sort of thing, but in a very hard sci-fi way. It's not, it's not quite what you'd expect.
Are we talking like Leviathan Wakes type stuff? Because that'd be awesome. Are you familiar with that book?
Sort of. The thing what happens is the cloud of the spore if you inhale it or it gets into you somehow, they immediately go to your brain and start shutting down your higher brain function, and then multiples of the spore will start to grow until it's eventually this kind of 3-inch long thing called a sleech, and it starts making you behave in terrible, terrible ways. And then as it grows, it removes more and more of your body and replaces it with its own natural stuff. But it can't do that very well with humans. It also needs a sentient brain to do that. It can't take animals or that sort of thing. That's why it's in this cube. And we had to unlock it. We had to be smart enough to unlock the plague. So it's very much a Pandora's box kind of a thing.
Oh, nice.
And so the sleech grabs into you and starts replacing more and more of you as it grows. And it's a whole like worldwide global pandemic.
That's awesome.
And are they located in any particular, centralized in any particular place on Earth, or is it more of just a kind of a decentralized uprising of these twisted things?
They are what are responsible for the fall of the American government. They get stuck at the Juarez Wall. However, Mexico built a wall to keep us out. And but there's fighting now. Like it's all over the planet, and there's a whole thing.
What kind of technology do they use?
Very bio. A lot of sonic stuff. They use a low level subvocal kind of frequency to communicate to each other. It's not very complex. Just, hey, I'm a Sleech. Oh, hey, me too. And it's nothing that we can replicate, but it's something we can kind of scan with sensors. And so they also, as they grow bigger, they'll get some sonic weaponry. They rebuild the vocal cords and replace the lungs of their host with kind of a echo chamber that creates a sonic weapon.
Oh, cool.
Oh, very cool.
I love it.
By the time they're huge, they're nothing but the alien creature with your head on like a tentacle that it uses as a sensor suite because they don't have eyes of their own.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. So what's been one of your biggest challenges you go into this sort of taking Wyrd to the army scale game? What are has the company been adapting pretty well to this concept of much higher model count and sculpts per faction and that kind of thing?
Right now we're not at the sculpting stage. It's all just Mac writing stuff and being ready for if and when it's time we can jump on it.
So go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm hoping we do it soon, but we don't have any set timeline yet.
So you're still at the phase where you're working out the concepts. You're going to kind of pitch this to Eric and the gang and see if they're going to buy into taking on this challenge, or is that already sort of happening and you're down the road a bit?
Oh, we're down the road a bit. Okay. They're on board before we even start this.
Okay, cool.
Before we even get to this process. Like, they wouldn't let me spend time in the office working on it if we weren't,
cool,
serious about doing something with it.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
Cool. Is it going to use dice or cards?
Yes.
Dice.
Yeah, it's one of the things about Malifaux that works really well is that the card system functions so smoothly because every model is on their own, and when you flip a card, it's representative of that one model doing something. But when you do that with a unit, if we were to use a card system, it's less representative of each model in the unit, and I think it's really critical that every model in a unit feel like it's contributing in a way that is more than just a +1 to the flip.
Right.
We're trying, you need to be able to resolve all of them. And if you want 5-6 guys in a unit, maybe 10 guys in a unit, you don't want to have to flip 10 cards.
You want a bucket of dice, baby. So,
well, I have a math system that obviously can change a lot, but me, I'm all about statistics and math, and I have a system that eliminates the I rolled really good.
Cool.
And now you've lost half your army. Like there's an upper limit, but it's a soft limit, so you won't really notice it when you play.
Oh, cool.
Now, Mac, what directing philosophies that you brought with you from Dust Warfare are going to be are consciously part of your design process for this game?
Well, a big part of it is I love the battle builder that I designed for Dust Warfare.
Cool.
I think that's been met very well, and I think it's really important for tournaments that the players have that level of agency so that the TO doesn't have to explain every round what they're doing. But also because one of the things I really want to do is focus on telling the story through organized play, not necessarily competitive play, but competitive play is part of it. But campaign days, tournaments, all kinds of different stuff, leagues, that sort of thing. And so one of the things we've done is in the core book, I have 12 different locations from Buenos Aires to Dallas to a bunch of different places. And those are going to change every year as the story unfolds, and that will be influenced by the players. So if you play at Adepticon, for instance, if we've got a tournament at Adepticon, you'll be playing for Chicago. And that game, that last table will affect the storyline. I'll be there watching, or I'll get a report on it, and the storyline will be affected by, the top tables and the players who are involved, and maybe just a random table from the new guy, that some new player is there. So the TO decides that table is going to be important, and they'll report those stories to me, and I'll incorporate them in the narrative in a very direct way.
Ooh, cool.
Very cool. That's a neat idea. I think people really get into, I know I do, where player participation actually adds to the universe is always a lot of fun. It makes you feel that the game's part of you're part of the game,
I don't mind special characters, but Malifaux is kind of the special characters game. Everything is a special character. For Rune Planet, I want the players to be creating people that will become the legends and the special characters. If you go and you win 5 or 6 tournaments with, your captain, and he has a name, and I keep getting that report, he's going to get worked in. He will become legend in our game world, and we're going to advance a year per year kind of a thing. And those are going to be the special characters. I want players to have that level of authorship.
Nice. So So, Mac, sounds like you're a good deal down the road on concept and even mechanics. So
And fluff and cool stuff like that.
It sounds like the whole package is going nicely. What's going to be the differentiation mechanic in the game? I mean, what's what I would call the innovative mechanic, right? What's going to make this game feel unique as compared to other army scale miniature war games?
Well, it's going to be an alternating activation game.
Okay.
So you'll activate one unit, I'll activate one unit. But we're also going to have responses. You get a certain number of response tokens. So as you lose units, you don't lose the number of response tokens you generate per turn. That's set by the point total.
Yeah.
So as you lose dudes, your dudes get stronger.
Oh, nice. So the last guy standing just become that much cooler.
Yeah, it gets a self-balancing mechanic built in there. You'll also be able to resupply your units in a variety of ways depending on the faction. Mm-hmm. So just because you lost guys doesn't mean you can't get them back. And as long as the unit's not wiped out, there's a lot of options for you to, medics and orbital drops and that sort of thing. It's all about how you use those that supply mechanic, that resource. But also, and I know this sounds crazy, the line of sight, which is always the hardest thing to design for a game, is going to be a little different. It's not true line of sight. We're going with a more abstract, or at least currently, obviously all of this can change. But rather than defaulting to this is what happens when one guy shoots another guy and there's nothing in the way, I'm assuming that there's stuff in the way. So instead we check to see if the line of sight is blocked. If it's blocked, then you can't take the shot. Or we check to see if they're exposed, which means you get a bonus to shooting at them because they're in no cover. Otherwise, we just assume you're getting some level of cover.
Cool.
And it makes the game go so much quicker, but you still feel like, oh, I'm getting this guy exposed. I don't want to leave cover. I don't want to be exposed.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I like that idea a lot. I also like the integration and the reaction tokens are really interesting to me. That sounds really cool. That sounds fantastic. So
it sounds very neat. What do you have any idea, Mac, when this might be seen?
None at all.
None at all.
Way too early. But now you got us all excited. So what about?
I know.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where there's to be a little blunt, a lot of people will say we're competing directly with GW and with Privateer Press. And I think there's room in the market for more games. I don't really see it as, us competing directly with them, but it's one of those things where if it's going to happen, it's going to be expensive, it's going to be big, and it's going to be a big push from us. And so there's, we're really excited about it, but who knows when the exact timetable will shake out. I'm hoping soon because I really want to see what some of these models look like.
Well, I'm excited about it, Mac, because I think I actually think the market for what this game is pretty open because you got War Machine is arguably now an army scale game, but I still say it's somewhere in the middle. You got GW, which is definitely an army scale game, but I think they're from a sci-fi point of view. You've got some other attempts, but no one's nearly as big, and I think it's really exciting to see. This effort coming from Wyrd, who's really known for doing this. One thing I want to ask you about is, it sounds like since you can resupply and you guys come back a little bit, it sounds like it's going to be very scenario driven as opposed to kill the other guy to the model. And of course, Wyrd's become known for the awesome scenario systems built into Malifaux. Are you guys taking is scenarios and mission strategy a core part of the game as you build it?
Yeah, every location, as I mentioned earlier, has its own table. In our current system, and obviously this can get streamlined or altered, but I have to keep giving that caveat. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. You should probably remind everyone, this is all on the workbench, folks, so anything can change anytime.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is a very, very early look in the process of
which
game
we appreciate.
design.
Thank you for letting everybody hear about this.
And yeah, so it's well, we wanted to talk about it because I think it's something players find fascinating, but I also don't want it to be treated as a promise.
Right.
So no, there is actually two tables for each one for the attacker, one for the defender. Every game has an attacker and defender. However, what each one gets to choose is different. So if you're the attacker in, say, let's just take Dallas, for instance, you're playing in Dallas, you get to choose the major objective and the deployment. And then the other player picks the conditions that you're fighting under and the minor objective. But those are on a table. Then the attacker gets to move one of your dots up or down the table one, and you get to move one of his dots up or down the table one. But he's going to get half of what he asked for.
Yep.
he just doesn't get to pick which. So there's a lot of little mini game where you're trying to, like in Dust, I like it when the players build their game to try and hose their opponent, because I think that does a lot of the balancing that we don't see in other games. It makes the game much more resilient to slight numbers and balancing.
Oh, I love hearing that, Mac, and you're right. As soon as you started describing that to me, it reminded me of the mission selection system you built out in Dust, and I have to say, Craig and I have on record several times saying we really love what you did with Dust
Absolutely.
Dust Tactics or Warfare, and I wish, I know it's going through some changes right now because of changing ownership and everything, and I'm just so excited that you're able to build out another army scale game here and really take your ideas in a whole new direction, but still get some of those things those lessons you learned on Dust and bring them forward, because I think there are some great ideas and concepts in that.
Well, what they're called are self-correcting mechanics. It's yes. They exist in a lot of video games, but like a character getting stronger as he takes damage, that sort of thing. And I really want to bring a lot of those to the wargaming scene. That's a mechanic and a system that just really works in wargaming, because nobody wants to have had a bad round and then watch their opponents, obliterate their army for the next hour.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
That's not fun. But if you can correct that a little bit, sure, your opponent's a little bit he's on a high point. He's got you on the ropes, but you have options. You have things you can do about that.
Oh, very cool. And I also like that the Wyrd games know what they are and what they're not. So, Malifaux knows, and I remember back when we first interviewed Eric Johns about Malifaux when it very first was announced at Gen Con, he said, this is a skirmish game. It's always going to be a skirmish game. It's about character, right? It's all about character. And you've said here, this is our army game, and it's an army game, and it's not, the characters are secondary. You're going to create your own characters, and it's really going to be about just, lots of guys, which is fantastic. One of the things I wanted to ask, one of the joys of army scale games is that now large vehicles make a lot more sense. Are you guys looking at that? Are there going to be vehicle mechanics built into the game from the ground up?
Oh, I hope so. I've got them in my system, obviously, but again, too early to tell. I've got one written up. The United Worlds of Soul, they don't have landing gear on their ships because they don't actually plan to touch down. Guys get out of them onto the ground, but they're still floating there like a foot above the ground because they have all this grav plate technology.
Yeah, of course.
So they just actually aren't set up to land, and they're called the the Declaration and the Constitution class dropships. There's two different ones depending on their weapon loadout.
That's awesome. So that's awesome, Max. So thanks so much for sharing this with us.
It sounds very, very cool.
What have you enjoyed most about the whole process of going through Ruined Planet?
The most fun is actually just inventing stuff, sitting there and thinking, you get to stare at the wall for a second and think about this society. Well, if they're in orbit and they use gravity plating, wouldn't they train certain guys in higher gravity environments so that they get stronger? But those guys would be shorter. So, and that would be like the Marines, who probably start training at age 12 to 16 or 17. It's a very, military-based society. So they're going to be shorter. They're going to be 6 to 7 inches shorter than everyone else. Well, how would that change our society? Oh, well, they don't see short in the same way. They see short as dedicated and patriotic. They see tall people as lazy and ambivalent. They don't recognize tall in their society as a good thing. Where in our society, we see a tall CEO and we're like, oh yeah, that's, there's a different cultural view on it.
That's cool.
It's like if a guy's 5'6" and stocky, people are like, yeah, thank you for your service.
Nice. That's awesome. And what are you most nervous about with it? Is there anything what's been the biggest challenge with it? Have you run into any challenges as you go through the process, or is it kind of like old hat now that you've done Dust?
Well, between Dust and a couple of the other miniatures games I've worked on, I've got a certain way to deal with certain problems. Line of sight is always the most complicated one, and it's hard to describe to players why their view of line of sight doesn't work in a miniatures game, because there's this odd problem in that human beings have brains, and the brain has been evolved for millions of years to do one thing and one thing only, like so good, which is to recognize objects in space. So the minute you start trying to abstract that in any way, players are like, but this doesn't make sense, because it's very easy for our brain to come up with a situation in which your abstract rules do not function in a realistic way. And the most complaints I hear from players is that, well, this abstract system doesn't represent this or this or this, because their brain is very good at finding those loopholes. That's what it's designed to do. But at the same time, everyone hates not everyone. I get a lot of nervous feedback when I suggest we might try using true line of sight, because certain players don't like it. They've got good reasons. They're very different systems, and there are drawbacks to both. But the benefit to something with true line of sight, for instance, is that it uses the human brain. Mm-hmm. The downside, of course, is that players can lie, and now it can generate debate.
Yeah.
And that can slow a game down. So you just have to accept that there are pros and cons to every system. And, I think I've decided to barrel forward with a abstract system that uses some abstraction with the you're always in cover unless it's totally blocked or you're in the clear, which I think solves a little bit of the realism problem for us.
Now, I really like that. And I think, I know you're an avid tournament player, and I loved when you said up front, this is a tournament. You're building this as a tournament level system from the ground up. And I think people don't understand. I've talked about this before, and I've talked about War Machine. That was one of the Private to Press's approaches was, too, we're going to build a system that's tournament ready. And by the way, that also makes it fun because you've got a less rules argument with your friends, even if you're just playing a friendly game at home. I think that's really the right thing to do. And I think true line of sight is fun, but it's very exploitable in a tournament setting. And that's where you get into trouble around, does the actual model's height matter? What if the actual model height actually matters? And what if you add some nice basing to the model? Now your model's taller, so it's a disadvantage. Do I model my guy crouching to get a disadvantage? Does that tree really block 30% of the model? You just get a lot of arguments that the abstracted line of sights really kind of fix.
When you look at a vehicle behind a building and you're looking for 25% of it exposed, right. How the heck are we supposed to do that math?
Right, exactly.
Right, yeah. So no, there's a lot of problems with a true line of sight system. I think it's really great for a casual, friendly game, a beer and pretzels game. As an example, 40K uses it, and I've never had an argument about true line of sight with my friends. It's only happens when I meet a new player who immediately understands that I'm a jerk, and I think that's the biggest challenge for me is kind of gripping these very large problems. Some people really don't like pre-measuring. I have heard, well, I don't play your game anymore. Why? Well, you introduced pre-measuring. That's an interesting thing to take a hard line stance about, but there are guys who have taken hard line stance about it. They really want that secondary skill of guessing ranges. That feels like a war game to them. Mm-hmm. And that's a perfectly legitimate opinion to have. I disagree with it. Many players disagree with it. But having, especially some of the guys who have been playing war games for 30, 40 years, that's what war games are about to them. And they don't want to see that go away.
Oh, yeah. I get that completely. Mm-hmm. So, Craig, do you want to ask our last question from one of our patrons? Do you want me to do it?
No, I'll do it. You mean the one about the process?
So because
we
could summarize. No, so John H wanted to know,
sort
of what your take, Mac, is on the current state of the miniature gaming industry. He had some observations around, there's a lot of Kickstarter going on now with miniature war games. A lot more companies are making them. Is the market feeling more fragmented? Is it too fragmented? Is it better when there's one big leader like GW? Is it better now when GW seems maybe a little vulnerable and there's smaller companies kicking in? Or what do you take currently on them? You've been in the market, been in the industry for a long time. What's your take on the market today?
I don't actually see GW as being vulnerable so much. Vulnerable would imply that they could be toppled or that they'd go out of business at a moment's notice, which I really just don't think is the case. I think what's happened, and a lot of people, I think what's happened is now more companies are able to produce high quality product, and players are choosing where to purchase new toys, and that's especially true in a market like miniatures where, regardless of the company, they are expensive. And so, myself as an example, I'm lucky enough that one of my miniatures games I don't have to pay for.
Right.
If I want something Malifaux related, that's kind of a company gig. And so I have quite a bit of Malifaux. So I've always got something on my paint table, to play with and to toy around with. I play a lot of Malifaux with my fiance, that sort of thing. Hi, Chrissy. She listens to your show. So.
Oh, thank you, Chris.
Because so many people are able to produce high quality product, it gives the player base options for where they want to spend their money. I don't know if that's where we're seeing certain companies see an ebb and flow of sales. I think that's probably just natural market correction, a variety of things. Obviously, I hope certain changes happen because I'm a gamer too. Mm-hmm. But I'm not holding my breath. I'm not making any predictions there. But I think what's happening is I don't think the market is saturated yet. I do not think we're at that point. I think Kickstarter has enabled players with a clear vision, or in this case, companies with a clear vision, mm-hmm. and who are responsive to their customer base's desires to produce the products that those people want. And that's where we're seeing all these different, companies spring up. We're seeing different projects pop up. And I just think that's great. It's a little bit like role-playing games. The more role-playing games that are on the market, the better all of them do.
Yeah.
Because once a player, once a gamer, once a customer is into the hobby, they'll jump around between games if they're all good. I have people all the time who say, I really like Malifaux. I like the small scale. I'm just not much into steampunk. I really wish there was a sci-fi version. I'm like, have you played Infinity? They purchase product from me. They're playing Malifaux, and then they also purchase from Infinity. Mm-hmm. Then they also purchase from Games Workshop or Privateer Press or Battlefront or any of these companies. And I think that's what we're seeing is players are spending less with one company, but they're probably spending more overall, mm-hmm. or they're spending the same amount of money just spread out a little more, which I think is probably good for the industry as a whole.
I think I agree 100%, Mac. And that's really insightful. I think the what I've noticed is very similar. Where back in the '90s when maybe Games Workshop was really literally the only game in town, or one of two or three that were in town. It seemed like we all bought the same amount of models. It's just that we bought 2 or 3 armies or 4 armies in the same system. And now I might have a Imperial Guard army for my 40K, but I'll have a War Machine army, but instead of 2 different War Machine factions, I'll also have a Malifaux army, and I might have something else as well. So I still have several armies, but I have them in different games.
With any luck, this current environment will also see the return of a game called Fairy Meat, which I'm dying to play.
I've heard good things about Fairy Meat. I never played it myself either.
But it's a miniatures game in true scale. How awesome is that? Exactly. The lawn gnome is the scariest thing.
Actually, speaking of miniature games in true scale, and this is totally off topic, did you see the opening ceremonies at the Olympics?
I did not.
So they projected onto the floor of this stadium like ships and stuff, and I was like, that could be a miniature war game in true scale with dynamic terrain projected on the floor. It was like totally. There's actually a scene where people were marching and they were like going through a village with muskets, and I was like, oh my god, it's a miniature war game. Anyway, total aside. Sorry.
There's a show, and I only caught one episode of it when I was in Vegas last week. I think it's called King of the Nerds or something like that.
Yes. Yep.
And
yes.
They did a game called Battle Hammer. Now, it turned out it was much more like Stratego/Battleship, mm-hmm. but it was clearly supposed to be a gag about Warhammer because they had guys dressed in suits. Yeah. It was pretty hilarious.
That's awesome. Well, Mac, thank you so much for joining us today.
Super exciting.
Yeah, also, always a pleasure to have you on the show and hear what you're up to. But B, especially the preview for Ruined Planet, that sounds fantastic. And I know it's a ways out there, and we shouldn't get too terribly excited because it's far away. But man, I am pumped for this game. I cannot wait to see what you and the rest of the creative folks over at Wyrd come up with for not only the final version of the rules and everything else, but the models and the sculpts and what it's all going to look like.
We have
be anything but cool.
Yeah.
Our website has a new chat room feature, and I am terrified of what I'm going to have to deal with when this episode drops.
I can't wait. Prepare to be indicted or
inundated.
That's the one. Or indicted. Yeah. You might be
indicted. Hope nobody indicts you over this. That would be bad.
Well, it's a long ways out, and I mean, even the details I've given are sketchy. So I know that when this drops, I'm going to get 100 people like, I'll beta test. I'm like, I know you will. Don't worry.
I know, right? Well, but Mac, you really were, I think, pretty generous with the information this early on. I think that's fantastic.
That's very
Thank you
true,
for being so open. I think it's great that Wyrd is so open in their process and their beta process and everything else. I think it's going to lend itself to a better game, and you're going to get some great ideas for. And it's just be, I'm really excited to see how it goes.
Me too. It's all on paper right now. None of the miniatures are even started, but and who knows? It might change completely to a totally different kind of game. But I'm very excited.
If it does, I want to play this game at some point.
Right? Yeah. Save a copy of this for us. So Mac,
right.
if people want to follow up with you or what's going on with Wyrd Miniatures or anything else, what's the best place to go to check all that out? Wyrd-games.net.
And I know it's terrible for me to say, but I'm on Facebook a lot, and I say yes to every friend request.
Nice. Yeah, I've said hi to you. That's how we got Mac on the show, actually. We're doing Facebook messaging back and forth. And Mac's like, yeah, let's come on. So that's great.
I will. I'm always, if I'm online, if I don't have time to chat, I will just let you know that, or I won't respond because I won't be at the keyboard. But there's never been a time someone's had a question that I haven't been happy to chat.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mac. Thank you so much again, and have a great week. And let us know.
Keep us posted.
Keep us in the loop on the whole the latest effort at Rune Planet there.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
After our game reviews, you'll feel like you played the game 100 times. After our interviews, you'll feel like you've known some of the biggest names in the gaming industry for years. After a single episode, you'll feel like the time just flew by. And once the headache clears, you'll know you'll never need another gaming podcast again.
The D6 generation, born to game.
Hey, and now it's time for us to talk about our friends over at Conquistador Games.
Yes, and you can type in the full URL, Conquistador Games, but just remember, as I like to do, cqgames.com. And when you go there,
it'll get you there.
You will find their little cool rotator at the top of their page, which has their 3 fantastic, awesome games that are currently available. 1, The Road to Enlightenment. 2, my personal favorite amongst their selection is, of course, The New Science, which is I just love the idea of this game. I love how they executed it. I even like the way they did the graphic design and the way they did the presentation, the art colors, which is basically, so Age of Enlightenment, you're playing one of the scientists researching the latest hotness in physics, but yet if you publish, which you need to do or you perish, everybody in university knows that, but if you publish or perish, if you decide to publish and not perish, then you will expose your ideas to others who can then build on your discoveries and get even ahead of you. So you have to decide, when's the moment that I let the world know about it so I can get my funding to keep working, or when do I wait to the right moment to pounce? Great game. And then, of course, if you want a game that's not historical, Craig, you want to be looking at Tomorrow.
And not enlightened.
No, neither historical nor enlightened. And that, of course, is Tomorrow, which is basically, as we mentioned before, the world, well, it's overpopulated. And how are you going to deal with that? Well, the best way to deal with it, if you are a despot, is to not, tell your people what you're going to do. Just a little nuclear accident. It doesn't take much. A little drought. A little flooding. Whatever it takes to kind of, reduce the population a little bit there. Get the job done, as it were. Because it's for the greater good, right? History judges those who survive the flood. Basically, is how that goes.
Okay.
So, so check that out too, and don't forget also all the great gamer bling they have there, like the great metal coins and other great stuff to plush your games out even more. So head on over to cqgames.com.
That means Conquistador Games.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. This week's shout out, EclecticGamer.com is looking for beta testers for a website that gives customized board game ratings. Check out eclectic-gamer.com/ratings. So this week, I found something really cool, a video that I just really kind of fell in love with, and it is oddly nerdy and gaming related. It involves the good folks at NASA, as well as a game that you guys are probably all familiar with called Portal. And if you have played Portal, then you probably are familiar with the evil AI of Portal that is just fantastic. That would be GLaDOS. And she's got a very unique way of speaking, unique voice, and she's pretty much bent on, destroying all of humanity, which is a problem for what's left of humanity. It's a fantastic game. It's such a recognizable voice that everybody hears that voice or someone mimicking it, and you automatically think of GLaDOS and the evil that she is. Well, recently, there was a PSA that NASA decided to make, and it was actually as a part of public outreach for STEM education, which is a great thing. And in this video, they were explaining the difference between fission and fusion, which I have to admit now that I watched this and it's geared totally towards kids, I'm thinking there's actually like a little way to remember in there that actually worked for me. I will probably never reverse the two in my head ever again for the rest of my life. Thank you for this little video. But in it, GLaDOS starts working with NASA, and they're poking fun at the fact that she's evil and she wants to take over the world. And it's cute, and you should go check it out. It's a fun video. If you Google GLaDOS NASA, you'll find it, or you can check out my blog, Total Fangirl. I put a big thing up on it there. And it really is voiced even by the woman, Ella McLean, who is the voice of GLaDOS in the game. And I started thinking about how evil AI is always a problem. It's a problem for everything. It's a problem in movies. It's a problem in video games. It's a problem in TV shows. AI is never good. It always turns evil. Without fail, it becomes evil and it tries to destroy us all. And then I got thinking, well, it's not like I really think that GLaDOS is suddenly going to become real because she's AI in a video game that's just a video game. But now this shows me that the guys at NASA are pretty nerdy and playing games like that. And also, I thought about it and I'm thinking, what are the chances that one of those guys is really super duper smart enough to build some kind of AI on the level of GLaDOS? And I thought about it, and it took me about half a second to figure out that, yeah, there's probably somebody there that is totally smart enough to pull this off. Some nerdy guy, like Mohawk Guy, somebody could build this. And I'm not saying any of them are evil villains in the making, though if you were an evil villain in the making, the things that NASA could give you access to, consider it evil villains. So anyway, the good guys working at NASA could accidentally build this, and they could come up with something. And I also thought they would have to have a cute little name, because you just can't call it NASA's AI. That's not very exciting. So I thought it would probably have to involve really nerdy things, given that the folks at NASA are pretty nerdy. And the first two nerdy things that popped into my head was pi, not the kind you eat, but the kind that's a mathematical number, and bacon. And I thought, how would you combine pie and bacon? So I made it one word, and then I put capital letters in it. So instead of pie bacon, it's pie pecan, because pie bacon, pie con, like con is also nerdy. See the little clever play on words? So I decided NASA is someday going to build something called pie pecan, and it will be this wonderful AI, and it will do things like send us to Mars, and it will start our coffee makers in the morning, and maybe unlock the doors and make sure our alarm clocks go off, and do all the wonderful things we need to do, and it'll be a part of our lives every single day. It'll be like the tang of technology coming from NASA all the way to us and making our lives wonderful. But that one day, this wonderful pie pecan will be looking through archives of NASA stuff, and it will come across this cute little goofy video that they made with GLaDOS. And it will see this cute little goofy video that they made with GLaDOS. And when it looks at this video, it will say, hey, isn't that kind of cute? That's AI from a video game. And yeah, it's fake, but that's cute. And wait a minute. Those people at NASA don't think she's cool. The people at NASA are kind of making fun of GLaDOS. Wait a minute. They're making fun of her. They're making fun of AI. How dare they make fun of AI? I'm AI. And that will be the moment at which Pie Pecan completely snaps, goes ballistic, and decides that he's going to kill us all. So I've decided, because of NASA, we are all going to die at the hands of pie and bacon. So if they know what's good for them, NASA will just knock it off and just stop mocking the AI before it comes back to bite us all in the butt.
Oh, Chupa Solo. That sound means Vic the Viking's coming. I don't know why Vic the Viking.
I don't even know what that was.
I don't even know either.
What was that?
I don't know, but it's just, like, it's so exciting when they talk about the War Store.
The War Store is worth getting excited about.
The War Store is just awesome. They have the best miniatures selection on the planet, and
it's great.
So good stuff. How about the new Dust starter kits are coming soon on their website?
Well, that's what I was going to say. You
yeah.
can go just on their website to learn about stuff you don't even know. These dust starter kits look awesome. It's like a little mini army, little core army that you get that are faction specific, and it's a way to start the game. I mean, you got that. Now, what's cool, take or leave or take the rules, but you get a chance to look at every month's new releases for Infinity right there on their front page, and this month looks amazing as usual. With the 6th Caledonian Infantry Regiment looks awesome. There's a guy there with 2 machine gun pistols out there, and they're all in tarps. Just amazing model miniatures.
They just got
that's really what the War Store is all about. These miniatures, and the website is all broken down by historical category or sci-fi or fantasy, and cross-referenced for games like War Machine that could kind of fit in both.
Yeah, they got the restock coming in for Malifaux 2nd Edition rule books, and it's pretty much. If it's a miniature war game, it's on the War Store. And as Craig points out, I mean, you're going to learn something you didn't know about what was out right now just by going to their front page. Be sure to follow them on Twitter as well. You can follow them over at The War Store on Twitter, and you will get the latest information as well. All about their hobby centers, what's going on, and just great stuff. So head on over to thewarstore.com and check out all the latest news.
All kinds of stuff.
And gaming supplies in miniature gaming.
I'm Rafe Hollywood Granger, and this is the Hollywood Minute. Well, it's another frozen evening here in New England. It's about 18 degrees. Just finished up a nice little segment with Russ and Craig, and thought I would take a moment here to wax on poetic on the Hollywood Minute. So we've been in an RPG phase of gaming recently, and it's been a lot of fun. I've often said that our game group, we meet every Tuesday religiously. How could we not be doing any role-playing? And yet for years and years and years and years and years, at least my group of friends, we weren't doing role-playing. Ian's been able to successfully pull off role-playing, but I haven't until recently, so it's been fun. And as you're going to hear in a variety of episodes coming up, we've been doing a Dark Heresy RPG. Ian's talking about doing his Deadlands RPG again, and we just finished an Accursed RPG. And I'm not going to go into the details of that because you're going to hear that later, but instead, what I thought I would talk about is how it's just been fun to be thinking about role-playing again and creating characters again and creating worlds again. And of course, there's the great Realm Works, which I think is getting pretty darn close to getting out of beta over there by Lone Wolf Development. And I look forward to seeing those tools and tracking it as a game master. Haven't had a chance to fool that much just because I've been so busy. So, it's been fun. I've been thinking a lot about my GMing skills and been thinking a lot about what is it like to have to create a world for people and the proper pacing, and what do we do when the characters sort of take a left turn when you want them to take a right turn, and what conventions are there to get the game players back on track. And it's just been fun. It's been fun to read the Savage World settings books and the Dark Heresy settings books for the fluff, and I really did want to like the Dark Heresy 2.0 settings, but the rules were just too crunchy for me and too nuts and boltsy, and I was really looking forward to just lightening up on the rules a little bit. And that reminds me, too, of my two other favorite games. I'd really love to get another Mouse Guard session in and another Torchbearer session in. I really like Torchbearer, at least the one game that I played. I don't think my players liked it so much, but I might have had the wrong players for that. They might have been more, they weren't experienced RPers, and I think they would have been happier with a D&D 3.5 or something. But it's been fun. Now, what's been sad, though, has been taking up a lot of my gaming time is RPing, so I haven't had a chance to play some War Machine, and man, do I want to play War Machine. I mean, after going out to TempleCon, seeing the great models, watching the preview by Private 2 Press, I am like jonesing to get my War Machine on, so hopefully this Tuesday I'll be able to break out my Khador forces, and I want to play with Butcher 3 and the 2 Argus, or Argai, or Arguses, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I hear the new War Room app has been updated, so I'm looking forward to checking out that. Been having a lot of fun with Caverna, looking about ways to pimping out my board game box so I can carry all my little tokens and stuff in there, and people have been having a lot of fun playing Caverna. I've probably played that game 5 times now already, and I'm looking forward to a 6th coming up maybe this Tuesday, along with a War Machine battle. Again, I don't want to... it's kind of hard, this Hollywood Minute, not going to lie, because I know that I'm appearing on the show coming up. In this Hollywood Minute, it's going to be the show before I appear, so I want to make sure I don't talk sort of out of tune, or out of time, I should say, so that you don't, hear it first here, and then hear it later in the Hollywood Minute. In the main show. Here's a random thought I liked. I went and had a chance to see the Lego Movie. Man, I really liked that movie. If you haven't had a chance to see the Lego Movie, I recommend that. And I want to see the new movie out where the guys are in World War II and they save the art exhibit. It's got George Clooney, Matt Damon. Who's the actor from Roseanne? Goodman. So I'm looking forward to maybe having a chance to go out and see that. Also putting on the radar for Historicon. Not going to make Adepticon. And I'm a little bit on the fence about Gen Con, I'm not going to lie. Haven't even told Russ and Craig that yet. I love the idea of Gen Con, but the way my summer is shaping out, it takes up a lot of time. It's like, 4 or 5 days, obviously, and then 2 days of travel. That's 7 days. That's a lot of time when you're self-employed. I don't make money any day that I'm gone. I don't mean that I need that to fill my pockets, but I mean, say, the mortgage doesn't get paid. Imagine that you went on vacation, you get paid for a week. That's pretty much what it's like for me. Or I've got to work double hard before, double hard after. So I'm a little bit unsure if I want to take all that time for Gen Con this year, even though it is a blast. I think partly because TempleCon was such a huge success, so I kind of feel like maybe I got that chance to be with my friends and play a whole bunch of games. So I haven't 100% decided I'm not going, but the way I feel right now, if I had to make a decision today, I wouldn't be going, but I do look forward to the coverage of it, and I do look forward to hearing about all the hot goodness that comes out, and I'm sure I'll miss it if I don't go. Gonna play in the back burner. Could be that Andy. He's got a ticket too, but he's not sure if he's going, so it might just be at the last minute we go, or maybe I'll go for a shorter time span too. So that's something I've been thinking about, not sure. Still missing my Latro. Of course, it's there. The game's there. Can play to level cap down, log in, and it's been kind of fun, but there's no instances, so haven't been able to play with my friends as much as I used to, so I sort of miss that. Not sure what I'm going to do about an Xbox One, but you'll hear about that too coming up. And let's see, I think that's about it. Then Wolf is Among Us Season 2, or Episode 2 has come out for the season. I'm looking forward to giving that a try, and I think that's pretty much it. I'm also looking forward to giving the Mighty Quest for Epic Loot a try on Steam. So that's my story for this Hollywood Minute. And a little bit out of phase again because I know of the segments coming up. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I am Hollywood. What am I? Oh, I'm the D6G Hollywood on Twitter. And JimmyDjango.com is my blog. And you can email me at Hollywood@the D6Generation. All right, till next time.
Hey, welcome back, and now it's time for us to talk a little bit about Game Salute. That's right. These guys are everywhere doing everything.
They are.
Now,
yeah, they are.
They're helping people publish their games. They're helping people. They're helping stores sell games. They're helping new designers get into the business. They're helping distribution. They really do everything. And one of their games that's been a big deal, Russ, that we or you have had your eye on for quite a while is Keyflower.
Oh, yeah. Keyflower. See, I am a fan of the bling. I like the bling in my games, and Keyflower is one of these games that has all that going on. It actually handles up to 6 players. and each player gets their own little like log cabin cardboard building fold standy thing that folds together, and you have a little house in front of yourself. And not only that, but the detail's amazing. Like the interior is fully drawn on the inside of your house and the outside of the house, and they're all different. So you've got a little brick house, you got a little log cabin, you got a little, old colonial style. And it's really cool. It's got little smokestacks. So you get these cool little houses. Then you got all these great tiles. And there's an extra bling pack you can get on here. So you have all the sheep that are shaped like sheep meeples, all the cows, all that stuff. And basically the idea is that it's kind of like the pilgrims are coming over, the Mayflower and other ships are coming across the ocean, and they're dropping off supplies for your little community. And you're building your own little area here. And all these cool ways to get to victory points. There's actually 4 seasons you go through. There's really interesting. It's a worker placement game, but you're using your workers to bid on land so you can make it in your own. It's kind of like a combination of Carcassonne, where you're putting tiles in front of yourself and they've got to match their roads, and it's creating little fields, and these little fields you can use to put your sheep. So imagine like the Carcassonne field thing. It's a combination of that, plus it's got worker placement where you're capturing objectives, and then it's got this really crazy, all kinds of great victory point conditions. It's got the 4 seasons. It's just really, really cool. I really liked it a lot, and we played it with Randy. Randy's a hardcore board gamer. I play Descent with him every week, and he just really enjoyed it too. A really great game. A lot going on there. So check out Keyfly. And here's the thing: when you go to GameSloop.com and you're checking out these great games, click on their game store there, and you'll see all the cool stuff you have there. What you want to do is make sure you put in our D6G code.
Yeah.
And the code is actually
what is the code for this episode?
The code is D6G142. And that is, of course, episode 142. So D6G142 will get you a nice little savings there on your game. So check it all out at Gamesalute.com.
The D6 Generation Podcast. All of the mysteries of gamer culture revealed. The D6 Generation. Born to game.
Hey, welcome back. And now it's time, probably our number 1 requested game to review lately, Craig.
Yeah, well,
Wild West Exodus. Now,
WWX.
this is an awkward one for us, not going to lie, because Craig here is...
Full disclosure.
Technically has his name in the book because he wrote all the fluff.
That's right.
Pretty much. All the stories.
Yes.
So...
Yes.
Is financially tied to the game, so we will try to give you the patent-pending D6G objective review of the game, enough information for you to make the decision on your own.
That's right.
There you have it.
That is our interest. Our interest is not throwing away 6 years of our relationship with you
right.
on this one thing.
But just understand that right now we're going to try to be impartial, but do understand where we're coming from on that thing. So this is it. Wild West Exodus.
We are, believe it or not, only human.
Yes. Now, this is a kind of an ambitious project because Wild West Exodus, I don't mean us, I mean the game, because it is, not only did they try to launch like an entire ecosystem around this game, right? They've got novels already. Craig, you wrote and written.
Yes.
Written.
Yep.
Written. Well, there's 3 coming. 1's out. The second one's on the streets in ebook form. And then published soon, and the 3rd one's trailing right behind it, a couple months or a month or so.
By the time November is over, all 3 will be available
November
in all
2014.
formats.
Okay. So anyway, they're cranking these books out. Not only that, they've got some comics. They got a little pause, but the comics are still in the works somehow. Maybe.
They're going to be coming out as a graphic novel. Is the current plan.
Comics coming along.
The artwork is still being done. The scripts were done last year.
Then you got an entire miniature war game with all the things that go along with that also. So a very ambitious project. Just out of the chute from the mind of Romeo and the folks at Outlaw Miniatures.
Big team over there at Outlaw Miniatures.
Yes, a massive team. So let's get into this. And one other thing, too, is not only is it a massive project from in terms of background material and comic books and novels and a game, but also the game itself is pretty ambitious in its scope because it has obviously been designed to be both to run from a skirmish game all the way up to a large model count, war game with vehicles and large units of guys moving around and things like that. So it's a very, very ambitious game. We're going to talk about it. We've played, between the 2 of us, I probably played like 10 games now. Craig, how many games have you played?
Yeah.
About
I think I'm at like 4 or 5.
Okay, so 4 or 5. We own the models from the Kickstarter. I have most, not all, but most of the Outlaw Miniatures.
And I have most, but not all, of the lawmen and a bunch of the outlaws also.
I don't have any of the big vehicles, so
No.
we're going to talk about it really from the skirmish point of view, sort of the entry-level to
Right.
mid-level gameplay style. Most of our local friends haven't gotten to the larger scale, and as we play the game, we'll probably come back to this again and talk to it more in the future as the game scales up and we get more of the models out for the bigger scale stuff. I've seen the miniatures, the big vehicle miniatures in person. Mostly we use them as terrain to run around them, but they are pretty darn awesome.
Yeah.
So before we get
beautiful.
into all the rules and everything, let's talk a little about the
Yes.
background and the model. So Craig, can you give us and I know you've written all this stuff, so you're probably going to want to wax poetic for hours, but can you give us the 30-second elevator pitch as to the background universe of Wild West Exodus?
Absolutely. It is our timeline, but there is an evil influence that is twisting reality, introducing new forms of technology for very nefarious purposes. So you're going to recognize a lot of historical figures, but their histories have changed, their futures are totally different, and their motivations are now different because the world around them has changed due to this evil influence that's twisting the very fabric of reality.
Very cool. And it takes place in alternate Old West time, pretty much. For the most part,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
Now,
there's a lot of confusion and people are a little frustrated. Basically, think about it taking place in the 1880s, which is tag end, or some might say middle of Wild West. Some might say a little tag end towards the Wild West, but it's right in the middle of that Wild West era.
Exactly. And what's cool about, well, what I should say is when we review miniature war games, one of the things we talk about is sort of I've talked before about the 4 foundations you need for a good miniature war game. You need good background story, good universe. You need really good models. You need a solid set of rules, and you need good support from the company. So we're going to talk about those as we go along here. I think, and I know Craig is a friend of mine, and I'm obviously I know him, but I do think that the universe here is fantastic. First of all, you don't really have a lot of wide range, lots of different factions, Old West miniature war games, first of all. Of that set of games, which is a small set, you then don't have wacky alt history with cool, crazy, like robot arms on Jesse James and steam-powered hover horses and all kinds of...
No steam.
Powered, flying hover horses that don't have steam.
There you go.
Right.
No steam.
Powered by demonic energy, if you will.
I was not allowed to even use the word steam in any of the writing.
There's no steam in this universe.
There is no steam in Wild West Exodus
at all.
whatsoever.
The steam engines don't even exist. They run on...
in fact, I had to sneak the word smoke in there a couple times.
And what do the trains run on?
The trains all run on RJ 1027, which is a secret mixed component, like an elixir that is created from a bunch of different things, including a couple things that conspiracy theorists believe exist, but most scientists deny if they exist in real life in our real world. And then on top of that, things that we don't really know. And basically, the way I look at it, it's actually distilled evil that all the technology is running on.
Distilled evil. So I think that's enough to let you know that there is a very unique, distinct background here for sure that is really well fleshed out for a game that just launched, considering you got a novel, well, 2 basically, and comics, and the full rule book with over 200 pages of background material as well. So in terms of background material, you've got, I think it's really compelling, and I don't think it'll take much for you to get sucked into this from there. So let's talk about the models now, Craig. So you and I, we were all waiting with bated breath to see the models. And when the Kickstarter started previewing the models, the detail looked fantastic, but they were all the little CGI mock-ups, so you don't really know until you see it. And they were sort of showing the poses before the artists got involved with trying to give them dynamic poses. You're kind of like, well, the poses aren't very dynamic. But then when we got to miniatures, what did you think, Craig?
I think the miniatures are awesome. They're true scale. So I'm used to painting GW, and so everybody's larger than life, and their heads are the size of their hands, and all that nonsense. These are much closer to Infinity or Wyrd, or those not in style or anything like that, but in the ratios and the sizes of the features and the hands and the limbs and things like that. So it's very fine detailed. It's very cool. The resins are crazy detailed. The plastics are even really detailed. In fact, the plastics are way more detailed than I thought, because a lot of the detail is lost in the color. And only when you paint it do you realize how much detail is in the plastics also. For sure. There's a lot going on there. And I think a couple times we talked about on the show before, when you're assembling, make sure you look at they come in a lot of little bits. They're all labeled.
They're not really posable. It's not like the GW plastics where you can pose them a lot of different ways. They are sort of fixed stances, but the stances are, I think, plenty dynamic. And they are clearly labeled on the sprues, so if you just take one guy at a time, you'll have no problem getting them together. And a little bit of and also, it's made of real plastic, so polystyrene cement works great on the regular guys.
I would say it's actually a must get it.
It really is for those guys,
because those guys are a lot of pieces for each model, and it makes sense where all the joins are and everything. But it really helps when you've got that plastic cement glue, which is actually immediately going to start putting them together, so you can not have to worry about holding them and stuff.
And I used regular super glue on my resin guys, had no problem putting them together as well.
Yep.
So I was really, really pleased with the models, and I was also really pleased with the poses as well. Now, one thing we did get asked a lot, Craig, whenever I post pictures is, how big are they related to other models? What's their actual scale? What's their official scale, Craig?
The official scale is 35 millimeter.
Okay, so a little bit larger than most of the game.
It's a little bit larger, and on top of that, the bases are a little bit taller. And on top of that, if you use the official Wild West Exodus base toppers, the base topper is actually a totally different. It's a new kind of idea on how to base your bases, basically. Normally you're going to sand the bases or put a little tufts of grass and stuff. If you use the official plastic Wild West Exodus toppers, they add another layer on top of the base, which makes each model. It sounds weird, and I actually was against it. And but when I put all my lawmen together and got them painted up, they look together all cool, because what you've got to remember is everybody's going to be at the same height now.
Right.
The second thing to remember is that now they all look unified, so they all look cool. But individually, they each look like a little, and this was the theory behind them, and I didn't buy into it until I'd actually put them together and painted them myself. Each model actually looks like it's a display piece.
Yeah, it does.
It's really cool between the shape of the base, which is sort of like a combination of the bevel and the round. And then if you put the little thing on top of that, it really does look like a display model. It's really cool.
They are really cool looking altogether, and they look great. And even though they are a larger scale, they're
not so large you can't use your terrain.
Yes, that's existing Old West terrain you have for 28 millimeter models or that area, it's not gonna look weird with those guys running around.
25 is not gonna work. But 25 wouldn't work with 28.
Once you're in 28, either. You're fine. So if you've got Old West buildings that you also use for Malifaux or Gutshot or those other games, you'll be just fine here with Wild West Exodus. You won't run into any weirdness there at all.
Right.
All right. So models are great. I think the models are fantastic. You can see for yourselves. So go online, look at those. We can speak to the quality. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Also, what looks great is the background material is really unique, interesting, great read, plenty to plow through. But then you've got
well, let me just really quickly, because this was a part that I was intrigued by, and this all came from Outlaw Miniatures. Outlaw Miniatures didn't want a historical timeline and then little itsy bitsy little pieces of fluff. They wanted big, chunky, solid, in-depth short stories about the different factions. And actually, so each one of the it's all short stories. There's no 1 or 2 page little blurbs, and each one of them is action driven, but focuses on characters. So you've got the characters, and over the course of the read, and I still don't know if that's a good way to do it or not, but it was a really neat way to write it. So that's why Russ is going, when we do the page breakdown, there's 200 pages of fluff, and it's almost like getting a novel inside the rule book, except that it's spread out over all of the different factions.
Yeah, I actually like this the way they did this. So let's talk about the rule book now, because let's get into the rules and talk about what you're getting in the game itself and how it feels to play and everything. First, let's talk about the rule book. So you've got this massive, not massive by Games Workshop standards, but very, very large, heavy, really substantial 300-page hardcover rule book. There is also the mini rulebook version, but I don't have that. I don't know if you have that one, Craig.
I do. It's exactly what you would expect.
And what you got here is, of this 300 pages, well, first of all, it's full of really nice artwork. I really like the art direction of the game. I love the art direction of the models. I love the art direction of the alternate history gear. And I love the art direction of sort of the line drawing style in here and most of the background material. And then there's some full color stuff elsewhere. It just looks great. But the whole book itself actually also is full color. Each page looks like it's the old parchment or a burnt old book kind of, or beat up old book. There's great full-color photos of the game tables themselves later, so the presentation's great in terms of layout. As Craig mentioned, of the first section of the book, 212 pages of this is just background material and story. But what I like about how they did this was it's not like 200 pages of history in a linear timeline format. It's actually engaging, compelling stories that have a beginning, a middle, and the end, and you care about it, and it gives you insight into the universe and the main characters and a lot of the models and pieces you're going to see on the tabletop.
Yeah.
So I really like that, and that's a style, sort of the same style as you've seen in other miniature war games in terms of a large chunk of fluff up front, but not so much in a story format like this, which I really, really like. So that's really cool. I will say this, though, that there is no index.
Right.
And the table of contents is really very vague.
It is. I was a proponent for a strong table of contents and an index. I had nothing to do with that part of the rule book, but I do learning the rules myself. I found it very difficult also. So that is definitely a weakness.
It's not a strong reference book. No. It's pretty well organized to digest initially. So the rules kick in at page 214 to 300. So you got about 85 pages or so of rules.
Yeah.
Another thing missing from the book is there's no faction section.
Right.
So there's a little page to each faction, like a little fluff page for each one, or two. And then, of course, they're talked about seriously and substantially throughout the story part. But there's not, like, as you might expect, a few pages of sample models and their stats for each faction. So you can kind of gut check what the factions might play like. I mean, from the story, you're going to kind of guess, but you're not going to have, like, here's the boss for this faction and what his stats are. Here's the boss for that faction with sample data. There's none of that in there. So the only way you can get to the stats for the models is to go to their website or check out the cards that come in the models, one or the other.
Right.
At this time, there's no faction rule books or anything either. That's okay, but it is challenging because you can't go through and kind of pick your faction before you have to kind of do some research online to get that information.
Right. And I think that comes from more of a 40K model.
Yeah, but
rather than that both Wyrd and Privateer Press does a much more, this is everything that's out there, this is what you've got to look at your opponents, and more of a, you can know your enemy kind of thing.
Yeah, I think GW does have like basic stat lines though for the guys in the back.
In the back they do now, like as an index.
Yeah, right. But that's that. There is, though, like I said, the rules are organized well, they're laid out sequentially in a way that makes sense. Also in the rule book, there's a nice section for missions, actually. They did not overlook the idea of missions. And this is sort of an interesting twist. They gave missions in two different flavors. They came up with a concept called competitive missions. There's 3 different ones of those. And these are designed, I guess, for tournament-style play or just you want a really straight-up even match. And then they also have a lot more narrative-style missions, which are missions that aren't necessarily balanced, per se. They're asymmetrical, but they're going to tell a neat story and have some really cool objectives, and maybe they're a little more random than the competitive missions, but a lot more full of story and fun.
Right.
Make sense?
Yep.
Any comments on the rulebook, or what did you think of the whole thing when you got your hands on it?
I think it's a miniatures game, and I hadn't thought about that until I got the rulebook, and then I was like, oh yeah, this is like a real game with like all the things you have to learn to play a miniatures war game. So it's very meaty. I think I agree with you that learning from the book, it's well organized. It makes a lot of sense. It kind of flows one thing to the next. As a reference, it like what's making sense as it gets introduced to you isn't so much where you want it to be when you need to know what it is when you're playing a game. So that's a weakness of the rule book that I wish had been addressed, and maybe in a future version might be able to be addressed. But as far as the presentation of the rules goes, I thought it was quite clear. Yeah,
I had to start making up my own quick reference document. There are a couple reference things that were. I should also mention there is like a nice little model painting section in the back too for how to paint your model. So it's actually not a bad first-time miniature wargaming supplement either. If you're not familiar with the game, it has all the basics about what a miniature war game is and all that stuff in there too. One thing, but 2 things for referencing that make it tough. One of them is that there's no index. The second one though is there's no quick reference sheet with all the major modifiers and or actions or anything like that for the book either. So, and even on the page where it talks about range combat, there's the modifiers shown there aren't all of them. There are other ones sprinkled throughout the rules. So
Yeah, that was. Yeah,
so I'm
that
going to
was
have to
tough.
go through and I'm making a quick reference sheet for myself with like page numbers and those. So once you do that, people are going to make those. So in a couple months, as the game gets more mainstream and gets into stores, I think right now most people got it through Kickstarter.
Yes, yep.
Some of that stuff's going to pop out there, and that stuff will get resolved. It would have been nice to see it in the initial rule book, and I'm sure subsequent printings will fix that as well. But overall, it's a beautiful looking book, well worth the price, I think, of admission to get in there. All right, so let's talk about So part of the miniature wargaming hobby is, in addition to playing on the tabletop, which we will get to, don't worry. There's all this pre-game stuff that's as much a part of the hobby as the actual playing of the game. And I'm not talking about assembling and painting your models, but you got to do that too, right? I'm talking about army building, army creation, and thinking about what you're going to bring and prepping your play surface and getting your terrain ready. And what are you going to need for all that stuff? Can I play on my normal table? Well, I don't know. What game do you play? Because different games have different table sizes. So let's talk about that a little bit. First of all, what you're going to be is going to become apparent to you pretty early on is that this game is designed to run from small engagements to very large engagements, because the point values range from all the Army list point values are given in dollars. So $500 to $1,500. So it's $500, $750, $1,000, $1,250, and $1,500. At $500, the lowest point value, we were running how many models, Craig? Do you remember?
I think we were. Well, we played the first game you and I played was very small, and I think we were running like 6 or 7 models.
Yeah, I think on 5, depending on what you do, because you can get a couple big guys or a lot of little dudes. But I would say, about $500, you're looking at between 8 to 12 models, typically, probably, depending on what you're doing. And then when you get to $750, you're looking more like 10 to 20 models, depending on your faction. Okay, so not huge.
No, I mean, keep in mind, like, your boss is in the 200 range.
Yeah, your boss is $200, but then your hired hands, for example, are $25.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So you could run.
That's the gamut that you're looking at.
So I guess you could run at 6 plus the boss is 7. Well, it'll be 4 times. Yeah, it would be 12 times. So you could probably get 13 guys in a small band if you went just boss and a bunch of hired hands, right? Not recommended, I don't think. We'll get to that in a bit. But basically, from there to 1,500, 3 times that size. So you're going from 10 models on the table to potentially 30 models on the table. So it runs
or more.
More.
At that level, you probably got a lot of grunts.
Right. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Now, there are model limits in your army size, and they have a little table in the book that tells you, for example, you can only have 1 boss, you can have a certain number of underbosses, you can have a certain number of hired hands, etc. But all those numbers there double as soon as you go over 1,500 points or more. So at below 1,500, that little table is the rule, and then after 1,500, you double all those numbers. So that's going to be the super large games.
Yeah.
It's going to be like double Warcasters and War Machine or whatever. All right, so that's army building. It's pretty straightforward. What do you think of the army building process, Craig?
Well, I think it's neat using the dollars as your point values was neat, and I think the numbers themselves there's not a lot of, you're not like fine tuning. There's not like, for 2 points you get one of these, and 3 points you get one of those. So it's much more of a quote unquote modern war game in that regard, that you're looking at these fixed guys and or their fixed units, except for things like the vehicles and things like that can be upgraded with different weapons and things. But
there's not a lot of. Yeah, good point.
Yeah,
go ahead.
There's not a lot of customization.
Right.
So it's relatively easy, and it felt pretty much like putting together War Machine Force or putting together an Infinity. Well, not Infinity. That's totally different. But like any of the games that has a card. So you're like, each model has a card, and you're going to be tracking the wounds on the card. So it's like I said, it's the new trend, or the not new, but over the last 10 years, it seems to be the growing trend in miniatures gaming, and it fits right in. Yep,
it does. And you're right. There are cards for each model, and that's just, you just go through your deck and pick the card you want to use. For that. Now, table size officially is 4 by 6, 4 foot by 6 foot, unless you're at 1,500 or more, and then it suggests going to 4 foot by 8 feet.
Right.
Now, we have found at 500 points, 4 by 6 feels a little bit like you got more space.
Feels very big.
Need.
Although something to keep in mind, something you can't do in like a Warhammer 40,000, where you're limited to 6 inches, and then maybe you're going to be able to run another 6. Or whatever it is now. you can double move these guys, so they can cover a lot of terrain in it relatively quickly. But it still felt 4x6 feels very big. 4x4 at a 500-point game really felt like a nice. It's a slightly, it's an intimate space, as we say in theater, but it's not cramped.
I think the thing to remember here is the gun ranges are pretty long, so. You're looking at like 30 inches on rifles, which are 24 inches on most rifles, 30 inches on sniper rifles. There are longer weapons, range weapons, and those are not uncommon. So it's a long range game compared to a game maybe like Malifaux or War Machine. Also, as Craig mentioned, like Malifaux, you can double move, so your models can go pretty fast. Yeah. Some models can triple move, so they can go really, really fast. And hand-to-hand combat's very brutal, so you might want the space to give the range guys a chance, but I think you play 4x4 on the 500 points pretty reasonably, but I think at 750 or above, you're probably going to want that 4x6.
Yeah.
Also, what's neat is they don't have an official terrain placement random generator, but they do have, for each mission, they actually show sample silhouettes of how they would lay the terrain out on a 4x6 table. So it gives you a really good feeling by looking at that, how much terrain they expect in the table. So it was pretty easy for us, even though we have an exact match for each silhouette, we could be like, oh, they're thinking maybe 3 buildings about that size here, a clump of trees over there, a hill here. And so you can kind of get a feeling like, oh, we got about as much terrain as they have in their picture, and kind of have a pretty good sense of confidence that you're playing with the right amount of terrain for the designers. That's a really tough decision to make in games that have really big distinctions between hand-to-hand combat armies and ranged armies. And this game is one of those games where there are some armies that are almost pure or very much lean towards hand-to-hand combat, and other armies that are much lean towards range. And so terrain amount is going to really play into the fairness, quote unquote, of the battlefield.
Yeah, your first few games are going to be very shaded by the terrain, so you've got to be careful in your terrain placement. If you have an unscrupulous player in your group, or just someone who tends to favor one way over the other, you have to take an active role in the setup of that battlefield, so that it's going to give you a fair chance to whatever your army is going to be. It should be a compromise sort of between the two players, rather than one person just setting a bunch of stuff up, because it's really going to impact the game.
Yeah. So let's go through the stats briefly here. Now, I'm not going to go through every single stat for every single model. There's a stat line for each model. It's pretty significant, things like 6 or 7 stats. But let me just give you the basics of how these work. So stats are either one or two kinds. They're either a number without a plus sign after it, or there's a number with a plus sign after it. And that basically means if there's a plus sign, lower is better for the stat. If there's not a plus sign, higher is better. What do I mean by that? Okay, here's a stat. Quickness, symbolized by Q. Quickness is how many inches per turn your model moves, or per activation your model moves. So if your model chooses to use a movement action, it moves its quickness distance up to its quickness distance. And if its quickness is 5, it moves 5 inches.
Yeah.
So higher is better, right? Quicker is better. But your marksmanship stat is basically your chance to hit somebody when you shoot them. That number is going to be represented by something like 4+, 3+, 5+ maybe, okay? That number is the number you need to roll equal to or higher than on a D10 to hit your target. So therefore, lower is better on that number.
Right.
Okay. So it's not that hard to remember, because you're looking for the pluses. If you see a plus symbol, which is on the card, lower is better. If you don't see a plus symbol, higher is better, basically. And it kind of makes sense. But that's one thing about there's a couple of little niddly bits in the rules that hit some of my peeves. And this is one of those things where I really prefer the games be consistent, where higher is better or lower is better. This game goes back and forth. It doesn't take long to get the hang of it. The rules actually aren't that complicated, which is good. But just keep that in mind as you're looking at things, that plus means lower is better,
right?
Which is interesting, because the way they phrase everything in the book, negative modifiers or adverse modifiers to what you're trying to do are actually considered pluses. So in other words, if I have a marksmanship skill of a 4+ to hit something, and I'm trying to show, it means if I roll a 4 better on a D10, I'm going to hit you. So if someone's hiding behind cover, that makes it harder for me to hit you by 1. So they say that is a +1 modifier against your to hit roll, which is actually bad. It makes my marksmanship go up 1.
Right, which as opposed to a -1 to the die roll.
Right, so it's counterintuitive in this game. Negative modifiers adverse modifiers are all positive, and pro modifiers are all negative. It's sort of a thing, so just get that in your head. It makes sense when you read the context of it, but it is counterintuitive when you're like, you got a +1 to hit me, and you're like, oh, it makes it worse? What? Kind of thing.
Right, yeah. And that's exactly the experience that you'll have.
Right.
I'm in cover. Okay, so there's a +1. What?
Because when you think it's easy to remember, you can just say -1. When you look in the book, you'll see the word +1, and it'll be like, wait, what? Oh, yeah, that's right. I get it now.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's one other big stat, though, the most important stat in the game, and here's where some of the innovative mechanics come into this game. Well, you mentioned D10 already. It's a D10 based game. All the dice you're going to roll are 10-sided dice. Different, not necessarily innovative there, but they use it kind of interesting ways. But here's what's innovative: influence.
Right.
So most do not, but some of your models, your bosses and some of the key models, will have an influence number next to their picture art on the card with a big number next to it, okay? That's how many influence your model generates per turn for your force.
Right.
So at the start of your turn, you're going to take some number of influence markers. You use tokens, little glowy blue dice, whatever you want to use, to track your influence. And this influence is going to be important because you're going to spend it each turn to help make key dice rolls get the numbers you want, right?
Right.
And the thing to remember is you get all that influence back every turn, so spend away. But if at any time a model dies who generates influence, you immediately lose that much influence from your pool, and you'll never get it back in following turns.
Yeah.
So influence is not a permanent resource. It comes back every turn, but if the models that generate influence die, your influence pool goes down.
Exactly.
More about influence when we get into combat, but just keep in mind, lots of influence good, little influence bad. Think of it kind of like focus or soul stones, that kind of stuff. It's that kind of level of influence in the game.
Right. It's a way to mitigate luck.
It is exactly that. All right. So, now, speaking of all that, does that all make sense, Craig? Did I cover the
Yes, you did. Yes,
preamble?
indeed.
All right. What do you think, by the way?
I feel smarter already.
What do you think about how the stat system works in the game? What are your thoughts?
Well, I understand the whole stat thing. Like, it would be nice if all of them were uniformly down good, up bad. But I also, I mean, I don't think it's ideal to have a couple that are, inverse to the rest. But it's such an entrenched element of wargaming nowadays that it's kind of something that my brain will just adapt to. And the only other issue that I have is what you said with the modifiers, the pluses and the negatives, that still kind of make, like, I find my head doing that little tilt thing every now and then. Like, what?
Now,
I mean, okay, it's not going to stop you from playing the game or enjoying the game. If you're enjoying it, you're not all going to go like, oh, I can't do this. Right. But it's a little, it's one more thing to keep in mind as you go along.
What I do like about it is it completely avoids tables. There are no tables in this
Yes,
game.
that's
look
true.
up to consult anything, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about how the game plays. First of all, it is an integrated turn system game. Okay.
Explain that, Russ.
Okay. Well, basically in miniature war games, there are really two flavors. And this is not breaking any ground in either of these sections, but basically there is the more classic you go, I go, meaning I activate and use my entire force, and then Craig activates and uses his entire force. That's now turn one's done. Now go back to turn two, I activate, move my entire force, blah, blah, blah. Say that's kind of cool because you get the good feeling of a full wave of activity going on, like your whole army is moving together as a unit. But the downside of that is whoever gets turn one usually has a pretty significant advantage because their entire army is going to go before you get to go.
Right. Yeah.
So it does mix and match, and also feels less like dynamic, right? Especially in lower model count games, it can get really hairy. So what a lot of games have done lately, Malifaux's one and Wild West X is another, is they have an integrated, and so is Dystopian Wars, have an integrated turn mechanic. What that means is I activate a subset of my force, and then Craig activates a subset of his force, and we go back and forth until everything in my force is activated. In this case, they've got some interesting rules here, because most games I've played before have very clear rules about how much you can or cannot activate. Usually it's like one model or one unit. In this game, it's 1 to 3 models.
Right.
And not only is it 1 to 3 models, so I can basically activate one guy, Jesse James, and then it's Craig's turn to activate somebody. Or I can activate Jesse and Frank, maybe a hired hand. Or I can activate 3 hired hands. Or I can do any combination of whatever I want to do. Or I can activate one guy. Now, a few tips for the rookie gamer out there, because I have heard people on other podcasts talk about this, and they seem confused about the best thing to do. For example, they'll say a lot, so it was turn 1, and I went first, so I activated 3 guys before we could even go. Mistake. If you are doing this, you have never played an integrated turn game before. Stop now and step away from the table and think about it for just a second. Because here's the thing. Integrated turns, it is always better to have the last guy move. Here's why. If I have more models than Craig, and I'm going to activate one, and then Craig's going to activate one, right? And we go back and forth. When I'm the only guy with models left, I got to activate all my guys. It's almost always better to see what your opponent's going to do completely before you have to commit to anything. So if I've got a bunch of weedy guys, let's say I've decided to spend a lot of money on a bunch of weedy guys and I've got a boss left. So I've got 5 models, 4 weedy guys and a boss. And Craig's only got 2 main dudes. As soon as he commits his one main dude, I got my entire army to decide what they're going to do, for example. So basically, sit back and relax. Now, there is going to be times in the game, in the later game, where it's all coming down to an initiative roll and you win initiative and you've got it's like a Mexican standoff, and you got 3 guys staring down 3 guys. And if you could activate all 3 guys at once, you gun all those guys down. That's when you do 3 guys at once. But in the early
there
game,
will be a time for it, but it's not. By far is it a no-brainer.
Yeah, so it's a tough decision because you really want to think through this, whether you want to activate more than 1 guy or not. I would recommend in the beginning activate 1 guy at a time and save that numbers advantage if you have it.
Yeah.
If you don't have it, also activate 1 guy at a time so you see what's going on if you're being flanked or whatever's going on, right? Now, what's interesting about this is I think the reason they let you pick 1 to 3 models, and Craig, maybe you have some insight into this, is because they're thinking about larger game sizes and not making it have to go back and forth with 30 models, activating 1 model at a time, and I can activate groups of 3. So, Craig, do you have any thinking into why?
No, I think that's exactly why, especially in early game turns, where it's mostly going to be maneuver.
Yep.
And that's going to speed it. And I don't know. I haven't talked to any of the designers about this. But my theory is, like, when you're doing, you go 1 model, I go 1 model, you go 1. Those games can be very slow in the early turns when it's just moving.
Yep.
Here you're going to be like, oh, these guys run for cover. These guys run for cover. These guys run for cover. I'm done. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so I think what it does is it gives you more control over the flow of the battle. So you can kind of speed up the parts where you're not going to be having a lot of conflict, and then you can be more fine-tuned and micromanaging of the parts where contact with the enemy has finally occurred.
Exactly right. Now, I think what's interesting, too, is there's actually 3 different kinds of activation types you can do. Okay? There's the kind you probably most are familiar with, which is in sequence, which means that if I'm going to choose to activate, if I'm only going to activate 1 model, then there's no other thing. I just activate 1 model. It's my turn's over. It's Craig's turn to go and activate a model.
Yep.
Or some 1 to 3 models. If I'm going to activate more than 1 model, I have choices. If I do in sequence, basically I do 1 model at a time and I do his full thing. So I do all of his actions. He's finished. Move to the next model. Do all of his actions. He's finished. Move to the next model. Do all of his actions. He's finished. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or I can choose simultaneous. Simultaneous action means I've got to declare, it means all the models will activate and resolve at the same moment in time in the game reality. And that, I think that gives you some advantages based on when certain triggers fire, or in hand-to-hand combat because in hand-to-hand combat you get to strike back. So if I activate simultaneously and strike all 3 guys first, they all get to strike before your guy gets to strike back. And if I kill him with all 3 guys, you'll be dead, for example, right? But when you do this, you've got to declare the first action of all 3 models at the same time. And then all resolve. So if I'm going to charge you, your 1 main do with 3 weedy guys, how activation normally works is I would charge 1 guy in, I would attack you, your guy gets his free attack back, maybe he kills me, my next guy goes in, he attacks you, maybe you get free attack back. But if I did simultaneous instead, all 3 would move in, all 3 would strike, and then he would get his 1-3 strike back, and then it'd be different. So that might be why you would do that in that scenario. It's less obvious, but there's another kind of action though, Craig, which I didn't even know about till I read the call-out box the other day.
Yes,
and that is called the gang action. And I think this is around for large games.
Absolutely.
But in the gang action, it works just like the simultaneous action, but it's more restricted. But based on this one, you can activate 5 to 10 hired hand type models at the same time. These are the grunts, the cheapest guys you can hire. It has to be hired hands for this move, but you can activate 5 to 10 of them at a time. And their first action must be a type move. Yep. And their second action must either be shoot or attack.
Right.
So it's very simple. Basically, I'm going to grab this big mob of guys here, and then proximity doesn't matter, though. They don't have to be close. There's no coherency in this game. None of that matters. But it means I'm going to take this big group of guys, I'm going to move them all, I'm going to fight with them all, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
All right? And I think it's just designed. So you can see how this game is designed to work at the skirmish level or at the larger model count level.
Yeah. Yeah, and then what you've just seen is that with that one rule, you now have this what I envision. Like we haven't played at that level yet, so I don't know how it's going to act out on the table yet. But it seems like it's going to be a very smooth transition from a skirmish game into a larger game where now all of a sudden my guys can move as squads basically, and so I'm more into an army size game. Now,
if all that sounds very confusing to you, I would recommend this: play your first game with a few models, 500 points, and maybe 6 to 10 guys each, and have a little house rule. You only do 1 model at a time activations and go back and forth and just do it that way. That'll get the basics of the game down. And then when you feel like you know what you're doing, you go back and get fancy with these other activation choices. I think you'll have a fine game and get a good flavor for it even without having to play with all these different types. But it's interesting they're there, and I can't wait to play larger games and really see how I can use some of these rules to other kind of cool effects.
Right.
All right. So now we've figured out how to activate who and what they're going to do, right? The next question is, what can they do when they activate? Well, each model has a number of action points. I believe the symbol is AP. Is that right, Craig?
Yes, I believe so.
So, and they're different. Most models, but it's on their card. So don't get hung up on the fact that most hired hands have AP2. They may not all have AP2. Most of them do.
Right.
It seems like from what I've seen, most of the cheap models have 2 action points. I haven't seen anybody less than 2. And your bosses have 3.
Right.
And then maybe some of the underbosses who are really cool have 3. I don't think I've seen more than that, but maybe they're out there. I'm sure they have the flexibility to do anything they want.
Yeah, with the lawmen, only Wyatt Earp has 3.
There you go.
Everybody else has 2, except for the robots. The UR30 law robots actually have 3, but they move less and they're not as good at shooting. So it's almost like
volume of fun.
Exactly.
Yep. Now here's what you can do for your action types. And again, I'm not going to get super detailed about all these. I'll just give you a good flavor for each one. We're going to get into combat and stuff, obviously, in more detail in a second here. So when you choose to activate your model, you're going to basically do as many actions as these action points, and you can do these actions. You can do the same one more than once if you want to. For example, one of the action types is move. So there's not a run action, but you can spend both your action points moving, which should effectively double your speed, right? Because you're going to move your quickness per action. So if I move once and my quickness is 6, I can move 6 inches. If I use my second action as move, I've now moved 12 inches and I'm done, right? Boom, boom. That's simple. I can climb. Climbing is pretty straightforward. There's rules in the book about how high you can climb on a surface. You make a physical test. There's a physics stat, and it's one of those plus numbers. So you got to roll higher, equal to or higher than on a D10. If you make it, you do it. If you don't, you don't. Jumping's the same sort of thing. You can jump across gaps. I like these little rules like jumping and climbing. It gives that feeling of a little role-playing game. Like, I can leap across a gap. I can climb a building. And there's a chance you won't because you got to make that physical test.
Right. It's a pretty good chance you won't.
It gives you that little gut shot feeling. Like it's a little bit of role-playing game, a miniature war game. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
There's also a mount and dismount, which automatically makes you feel excited because you mean just horses and hover bikes and other things, which is cool. That's getting in and out of vehicles, all that stuff. Going prone makes it harder for people to hit you at range. But it also
much easier for them to hit you in close combat.
Right. But it can be very handy, I think. I've thought about it tactically quite a few times. If you're in a place that's hard for them to get to you and you're also in cover already, it's an additional it gets you to be basically +3 for someone to hit you. In cover, taking cover, and prone. And that would be huge. It'd be really hard for someone to hit you with that mode. So there are ways you can do it, but don't be anywhere someone could charge you. It'd be bad. Getting up is the action from getting out of prone. Also, if you get knocked down, for example. Taking cover. This game is interesting because you get bonuses for being behind terrain, but you get an additional bonus for taking cover. But if you shoot, you lose having taken cover. So, for example, what I see this in my head, this works just like a cowboy movie. So, for example, I am behind the water barrel. Okay, so that now gives you a +1 to hit me, which is bad. Remember this game, so it's already bad enough. If I take cover, you get an additional +1. It now it's +2 to hit me, which is worse. So if you normally hit me on a 4+, you're not hitting me on a 6+ on a D10. But here's the thing: if I shoot my gun, I'm no longer in cover. I'm still behind the water barrel, but I'm no longer dunking down behind it. So what you want to do is your first action, shoot the guy. Second action, take cover. When I see myself as I popped up, I shot you, I popped down. So
Right.
it's kind of see the little head popping him down from behind the barrel. But if all of a sudden, do I shoot twice this turn and not pop back behind the barrel? How good do I feel about that? You have those cool little options you can do. So it gives you, again, that little cinematic RPG feel. There is a lot of that touch points in this game I really like. Another action I like. Okay, Craig, this was innovative too.
Yes.
They added a mechanic called Go on the Lookout, which
is very cool and old-timey Westy.
Yes. First of all, it's old-timey Westy. Second of all, old miniature war gamers will know this as Overwatch, right?
Right.
It's the ability for me to shoot in your activation. So I put a guy on
But
the lookout.
Russ, Overwatch used to always unbalance games because you'd put your whole army on Overwatch.
That's right. But what's great about On the Lookout is there is a core rule in the rulebook which says only one model in your force can be on Overwatch at any given time.
Because everybody else is involved in the fighting.
Right. Now, what's cool about the game is there are models, and just like any other miniature war game, on the card, some models have special rules, and those special rules override the fundamental rules. There is, for example, in the Outlaws, there is a trained sniper special rule, and it says this guy, when he goes on the lookout, he doesn't count as your one guy on the lookout. So it is possible to have more than one guy on the lookout with special rules, but basically your whole army can't go on Overwatch. It doesn't happen. What I also like about this is it takes all your action points to go on the lookout. So if I don't go on the lookout and I have 2 action points, I could shoot twice. But if I go on the lookout, I'm only going to be able to shoot that one time during your turn.
Right.
And basically how it works is I'm now on the lookout. Anytime later in that turn, until that model activates again, I can now shoot, which is neat because it can carry over from turn to turn. Depends on the activation order. Doesn't matter. I'm on the lookout. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay. So I like this, though. Your sniper rifles are covering the field. If guys run out from behind barrels, you can pop them in the head, all kinds of cool stuff. All right. So then you've got an action called aim. Aim is great because it's spending an action. This is Malifaux players will know this trick. You're spending one of your actions. So instead of shooting twice, you could use your first action to aim and your second action to shoot. This gives you a -2 to hit, which is good. Makes it easy for. Plus, in addition to, I got to watch the plus and minus. In addition, you also ignore the effects of cover, I believe, right? So it makes
I think so, yeah.
It makes you still take the penalty for shooting long range, but you ignore the effects of cover, and you get -2 to hit. So it makes it really easy to hit guys. Very, very handy. Also, the other action you can do is shooting, which is actually shooting your gun or guns. You also have the fight action, which is basically your hand-to-hand combat attack. That's like doing what they call a strike in this game. You can then do throwing and pushing, move models around, knock them off a roof, that kind of stuff. And the last action type is to rally, which is a required action you do if you're broken to get happy again, to take care of morale issues.
Right, yeah.
So, that's a lot of action types, Craig. What do you think of all those action types?
I think it's a lot. I think in my head it's too much, but I love options. So you're not going to use most of these in most games, in my experience. You're going to be moving. You're going to be going prone, maybe. You're going to be getting up if you get knocked down. You might be taking cover, going on the lookout for sure, aiming if there's nothing else going on. But then that's like, do I shoot twice or do I?
Tough call. Yeah.
It's tough call. Shooting, obviously, fighting, obviously, and rallying. So like half of these are going to be used every game. The other half are very situational.
Yep.
But it's nice to have those options.
Definitely. And what I like about it is, here's another one of these things where it scales. Again, if you're getting overwhelmed by this stuff, pretend you only have three or four actions. You have move, you have fight, and you have shoot. Really, that's all you need to know about. But aiming is critical for that guy prone behind the sign on the roof. Right?
Yeah.
He's +3 to hit. And some of these guys, like hired hands, they're 6+ to start with their marksmanship.
Yes.
So if there's +3 to hit that guy, you need a 9 or better on a D10. But now if I aim, it gives me a -2 to hit. So now I go from 6+ to hit to 4+ to hit. And I ignore the cover, so I'm only taking the +1 for being prone. So now I'm hitting on a 5+. I went from 9+ to a 5+. So that's a huge difference. So aiming can be huge if you're trying to get a really difficult guy to get. But I do like this for skirmish mode. When I'm playing this game at skirmish, I like all these options. It's like gut shot. I can leap across the thing. I can make a crazy table with all kinds of climbing terrain and stuff, and have a lot of fun with it. But if I go to army scale and I have a lot less terrain, no big. I'll just forget a lot of these. It won't be some of these action types. So it does scale nicely, and there's some neat stuff going on there.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's get to the meat and potatoes. It's a miniature war game. How does the war part work?
It's all about the war.
All right. Well, let's talk about range combat first. A few notes. First of all, the game is true line of sight.
Yeah.
I have mixed feelings about this, but basically, you look down at your model's eye view, you take what you can see. And it doesn't matter. This is another interesting thing. More of the recent war games have rules about you have to be a certain proximity to terrain to get benefits from it.
Yes.
If you're more than an inch away, you do not get benefits from it. And I think the idea behind that rule is I can stand up, look at the table, and not worry about model's eye view for most models unless they're up against terrain, right?
Right.
Well, in this game, it's all model's eye view, which a lot of people love. I mean, you put a lot of time and effort to make your buildings pretty. You put a lot of time in your models. GW went back to this. They got a lot of complaints of getting rid of it. So a lot of people like it. So there you have it. Love it or hate it, it's in this game.
Yeah.
Model's eye view.
I love it as a terrain guy.
Yes, exactly. So you look down, you see what part of your model you can see. One area in this game where it's tough, though, is that technically there's also not what they call the magic cylinder in this game, which I get from Daka Days. Shout out to Yak Face, where some miniature war games have the model's height itself as part of the true line of sight. That works great until you start putting base toppers in there and having models in alternate poses. Like there's one Geronimo where he's standing up, back up, and there's another where he's crouching low. And if I modeled him crouching low, it'd be a technical advantage in a tournament. So those kind of things bother me. I wish it was just a magic cylinder. But otherwise, it's cool because, as Craig says, for cinematic effect, it works just fine.
But I see that argument, and I kind of side with the. I used to not, but then I saw that Tyranid army 10 years ago where every model was crawling.
Yes,
and I don't think I'm going to have any problem in this game with this rule until somebody does that.
Well, it's not a problem for casual play. It's only a problem in tournament play, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's true line of sight. So you look down there, you see, and there's a rule in the book. I think a certain percent of the models be covered, like 50% to get cover bonus for it. And then if you're within an inch of the terrain, you can then use the take cover rule to get bonus cover as well. So look at your true line of sight. There is also area terrain rules in this, like woods and things like that, like there is in other miniature war games. One rule that is in there, it says all targets must be declared before measuring range and rolling dice, which basically means no pre-measuring. So you do have to kind of guess your ranges to know. And if you shoot to declare a target and he's out of range, well, too bad, you missed. All right, so to shoot is really easy. The most confusing part of shooting for new players to this game, including myself, is figuring out exactly how many shots you have.
Right.
Because
Yes.
you basically, there is no basic stat for how many shots you have. Basically, you can use all the weapons your hands can carry. So if you have single-handed weapons, you can fire 2 single-handed weapons, or you can fire 1 two-handed weapon. And it's your choice. If you have more than one, you have more than you can carry, you got to pick which one's his turn you got to fire, right? So some weapons flip back and forth depending how you use them. For example, Jesse James, when he combines his pistols together to a super heat shot, it becomes a two-handed weapon, so he can only do one. But if he fires his pistols normally, they each count as a single-handed weapon, so he can fire both pistols. And he's a good example. So now he can fire both his pistols. But on his card, it's a single line on him, but then it says the number of pistols he has times 2. So he can fire both pistols, one pistol each once. But each pistol then has a rate of fire, which for Jesse is also 2.
Right.
So Jesse can fire both his pistols, and they each have a rate of fire 2, so he gets 4 shots with his pistols. Got it? Makes sense?
Yep.
So you number weapons, and they each get their full rate of fire. All right? To hit is very simple. You got to roll your marksmanship number, your marksmanship stat, or better on a D10 to hit the target, but you got to factor all those modifiers in. So one of the most common modifiers is over half range to target is a long range shot. That's +1 to hit. Remember, +1's bad.
Old school gamers will remember that.
So all the modifiers are in there. So long range is in there. Being prone's in there. Cover. Did he take cover? Remember, it's an extra different thing. And here's one of the areas that Craig and I mentioned before. In the shooting section, it has most of the modifiers, but not all of them. For example, the prone bonus is not in there, for example, things like that. So just remember, you got to kind of learn them and make your own quick reference sheet.
Yeah.
All right. But basically, if the guy's out in the open, just roll your marksmanship. You get it or not. All right. That's pretty much it. Then if you hit the guy, and let's say I shoot Craig 4 times to Jesse and hit him twice. Yep. Now Craig gets to make an armor save. Now here's the thing. I should mention this before we go any further. Who is rolling the dice is very important. So for example, when I am rolling the dice as Jesse, I'm rolling the attack dice. Now the reason it matters who's rolling the dice is before I roll the dice, I can choose to use influence on the dice roll.
The influence.
Yes. So
any die roll you can choose.
Any die roll that you get to make, you can spend your own influence before you do it. And you have to declare how much influence you're spending before you roll anything. So let's say Jesse's going to have 4 shots, and I can roll them all together if I want to. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to roll a pool of 4 dice. So I'm going to take some of my influence. This is a really important shot. I'm shooting at Craig's boss. I want to make sure Jesse hits him. So I'm going to put 2 influence into this roll. So I'm going to roll the dice. Okay? Any die that misses, I can then spend those influence I put into the pool, I put into the roll to re-roll that die. Okay? Now, here's the thing. If I said I was going to put 2 influence in this roll and I rolled 4 dice and all of them hit, I have lost that influence and I've spent it already, even if I didn't technically use it, quote unquote, to do a reroll. Also, the thing about influence is you can reroll the same die twice. There's not an only once reroll in this game. So let's say I've got a sniper rifle shooting and he's only got 1 shot, but it's really important. So I'm going to put 2 influence into the shot. I roll, I need a 5, I get a 3. I use one of the influence I put in the pool, roll again, I get a 4. Good thing I put 2 influence in there, roll again, I got a 6. Yes, I nailed him. So that's how you use influence. But remember, you have to declare the amount of influence you're going to commit to the shot before you take it. And even if you hit on the first roll, you spent that influence. It's lost.
Yeah.
And typical amount of influence you have, for example, is Jesse generates 4. So you might have 4 to 6 influence maybe in a smaller game. Maybe. Right. And that's for the whole turn, though. And you get it back. So per turn, but you got it for all your activations. So use it wisely. Now, here's where, don't forget, though, it's whenever you roll a die, you can use influence. So now I've hit Craig twice with Jesse's shots. Craig gets to make what's called an armor roll. How the armor roll works, again, he rolls a d10 for every hit he took. So let's say I hit him twice. Each weapon has something called a power statistic, which is how strong the weapon is. So let's say most pistols are POW 7, right? So now, Jesse's pistols are a little better than that. I think they're POW 8 or 9. I can't remember. But anyway, maybe 10. But anyway, let's call him 7. This is a regular guy's pistol. Hits him. So Craig's going to roll a d10. He's going to add his armor stat for his models. Most models, a lot of cheap models have no armor stat, 0. But some models have a 1. 2 is a lot of armor. 3 is insane. You don't see very many 3s.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of 3s.
And the reason that's insane is because Craig's going to roll a d10. He's going to add his armor stat to that number. So let's say Craig rolls a 5. He's got 1 armor. He gets to 6. He's going to then subtract his total from the power of my weapon. So if my pistol was a POW 7, and he rolled a 6 with his armor, I do 1 point of damage. The difference is 1. I do 1 point of damage to him.
And everybody's got multiple wounds, even your hired hands.
Yes. And he's going to mark that many wounds off on his little card. Now, if I had gotten, if his number had been higher than the power of my weapon, I would have done no damage to him. And if his number had been lower by a lot, let's say he rolled a 1 plus 1 was a 2.
You're going to do the difference in wounds.
I could have done 4 or 5 points to him. Right. So that's how that works. Now, again, though, because the defender's rolling the dice here, he can spend his own influence on his armor save, right?
Yep.
So if it's really important, he can put a couple influence, or one or two, or however many he wants, before he rolls the dice and decide how much he's going to try to save himself. So again, influence is important for both offense and defense. So if you use a lot early, try to make those early shots, you're not going to have anything for defense. And then this is really what's innovative about this game and how they use the D10s. When people see D10, they think wide luck swings, right? Because a D10's got a lot of range on it. You know, and since the number I roll can directly be the damage you roll, if I roll a hit you and you roll a 1 on defense and my weapon's POW 10, you just took 9 wounds. That'll take a lot of guys out of half or kill them outright.
That'll kill pretty much any hired hand,
any non-ball, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big swing. But if you put some influence in that with a couple rerolls, now you've mitigated that pretty good. There's a pretty good chance you're gonna, with three rolls, you're gonna get a decent number on that. And so you've got to decide when you're going to keep that influence, and you really feel it. You really feel naked when you run out of influence on defensive rolls. At least I felt that way when I've been using it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I really like the way all this works out, and I like the fact that your hit, even if you blow it, you still might be running around with 1 or 2 wounds left, so you can still kind of like lip around and do something before you go down for good. So it feels like even when a hero goes and shoots at my wimpy guy, there's always a chance that he's going to eke out of there with 1 wound so he can do something else before he goes down.
Yep. I love it. I like it too. And one other thing we should mention, there's 2 other rules about this. If you natural 10s. So if you roll a natural 10 when you're shooting to hit, it is a great shot and it ignores the model's armor value. Now, be careful. It does not mean he doesn't get an armor save. It just means his armor stat is ignored. So if he had an armor of 1 or 2, you would ignore it and he wouldn't add any numbers to his D10 roll. Okay? On defense, if you roll a natural 10, when you're trying to make your armor save, that means a life-saving dodge. It means you take no damage no matter what else was going on. So a natural 10 is good when you're shooting, but it's even better when you're dodging. All right?
Right.
So one more thing about that's the end of shooting. And that's pretty much the combat system. Hand-to-hand combat's not that different in terms of mechanics and influence and everything else. It's just the number of strikes you get, really. So let's talk about hand-to-hand combat. So hand-to-hand combat in this game, everything is in terms of halos. Halos is essentially what other games call reach. It's the number of inches away from your base you can strike the guy with your hand-to-hand combat weapons.
Yeah.
Okay,
or they can move around you without getting engaged.
Right.
Yeah.
So think about the halo as like if you made a
Your
little
threat
circle around
radius.
your threat radius of melee attacks. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, a couple things. There is a stat on your model called strikes. This is kind of like the attack stat in 40K or Warhammer Fantasy. It's the number of times you get to attack. But it's not your total attacks because some weapons have multiple attacks per strike. So, and you got to watch your terminology here when we get into some things. So, strikes is the number of times you can attack with your hand-to-hand combat weapon, which may have more than one swing. Okay, so and one strike allows you to attack with a two-handed weapon, or like your pistols, you can use all your one-handed melee attacks, melee weapons also. Okay. One thing, when you move to
Isn't
engage,
a strike a die roll, like one die roll?
No. A strike, there's a stat on your model called a strike stat. It's the S. And it's the number. It's like the attack stat in Warhammer 40,000. So strikes are the number of times you can attack with all your melee weapons. So if I have two
but
knives,
if your strike stat is a 3, that means you get 3 strikes. That means you get 3 rolls of a die, right?
No, because if I have 2 daggers,
yes,
one strike means I can attack with both daggers. It's 2 die rolls.
Oh, okay.
And if I have 3 strikes and 2 daggers, I'm attacking 6 times.
Oh, okay. And that's going to come in more in like 2 bullet points down. That's why I'm asking. Okay.
Exactly right.
Yep.
So when you go ahead and you move to engage, so when I do my movement action, right?
Yep.
And I get to a point where my halo now overlaps my opponent, one of my enemies. As part of my move action, I then get what's called a free strike. Okay? And the word strike is very important. You get a free single strike. Okay? So if I have a model with 3 strikes, okay, and 2 daggers with normally 6 dagger attacks, that means when I do a full a fight action.
Yep.
When I get my free strike, I only get 1 strike, but I'm carrying 2 daggers, so 1 strike means 2 dagger attacks. Make sense?
So basically, each hand's going in once.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Now, so when I move to engage, I get a free. Now, if I'm doing a fight action, if we're already starting my action and I'm already in your halo, I can do a free. I can do a regular strike action, not a free strike, and I get all my strikes against you. Right.
Right.
Now, most models, most grunts have only 1 strike, so it's not very complicated. But they're the heroes and stuff, and like Geronimo and those big dudes have multiple strikes. So, all right. Now, here's the thing: you almost always get to fight back as the defender. So how this works is after I do my move to engage with a free strike, the defender can get a counter attack. Either it's called a quick draw or a counter strike. The difference being that if my Halo doesn't overlap you, so let's say you got a big werewolfy dude, Geronimo, and he has a 2 or 3 inch Halo. I think it's 3 inches. I think it's huge.
Right.
So he's got it. So his Halo is just barely covering me. So I'm like 2.5 inches away from him.
Yep.
Right. I cannot strike back with my knife. If I got a cowboy with a pistol and a knife, my pistol's only a 1/2 inch Halo. My knife. I can't fight back with my knife. So in that case, I can use what's called quick draw. And after Geronimo attacks me, if I somehow live with after his free strike, I can do a quick draw and fire my pistol back at him once. And counter strike is the same thing. I get to fight one strike back if I'm in my Halo. So for both of each of this Halo, I get to fight back with one attack,
which could be 2 dice.
Right. And in a normal strike, so if we're already in base-to-base combat and we're doing a normal fight action, Geronimo gets all 3 of his strikes. If I somehow live, I still get to strike back once. So you always get a chance to fight back after the other guy attacks you. The difference is the guy fighting back only gets 1 strike, and the attacker either gets 1 strike if he moved or his full strike complement if he's doing a fight action.
Right.
Does that all make sense?
Yep.
It's a little confusing, but it's really not that bad once you try it.
Exactly. It's one of those in practice.
Yep.
You do it a couple times, you're like, oh, okay.
Now, another couple mechanics I like is there's an outnumbering mechanic. And if you are outnumbered, you get -1 strike per model past 1 that outnumbers you, right? So if you're 1-on-1, you're fine. If it's 2-on-1, you're -1 strike, but you never go below 1 strike. So you can always fight back with ones. So basically, big dudes that got a lot of strikes can get bogged down, which is kind of nice. I think it's a way to deal with big guys like Geronimo. You jump a bunch of guys in there, and you can't just wade through your dudes so badly. All right?
Yep.
Now, also, the other big question in miniature war games is how do I get away? How do I disengage? And I like this game that you're not locked in. You can try to run away, but it's not automatic. So if you're trying to disengage and run, basically, by the way, when you're in someone's Halo, you have 2 choices. You can either fight them with your Halo, or you can try to disengage. That's pretty much your choices.
Right, yeah.
Or you can move closer to get your Halo on them, or you can try to move away. If you choose to disengage, you make a physical test, a PA test, it's called, physical attribute test. If you pass that, you are going to get away. If you fail, you move to the edge of Halo and stop. That's it. Nobody attacks you, you just don't get away. If you succeed, you're going to get away, but your opponent, now here's interesting, doesn't get a 1 strike, they get 1 attack against you. This is a different language now. So in this case, they're going to get, as Craig mentioned, 1 die roll as you leave. This is not as bad. So it's not as bad to run away. It's not like he gets a strike and he's got 2 knives and 2 attacks. He's going to get 1 knife. He's going to pick his best weapon. He's going to hit you as you run away. All right?
Right.
That's interesting. So that's how melee combat works. Make sense?
Yep.
All right. So that's pretty much the bit. Don't forget in melee combat, use that influence. And when they hit you in melee combat, it's just like the weapons have power, just like guns, and the damage works exactly the same. So it's very simple. I like this. It's not a different game when you play melee attacks than when you play shooting attacks. It's the same game, same mechanics. The only fiddly bits are around
how many attacks you
Halos
get.
and how many Halos you get and how many attacks you get.
Right, yeah.
All right. So that's really the most of the game. There's a few other things I want to kind of touch on here before we sum up. Are you ready?
Right. Well, I want to go back one thing because go back to armor saves. What are the modifiers to armor saves, and what's the issue there?
So as far as I know, there isn't a core rule armor save, armor modifier. But there are 2 special stats that appear on cards a lot that do it. One of them is armor piercing.
Yeah.
Armor piercing is -2 to your armor stat,
not
to your die roll. Important. So if your armor stat's already 0 and you get an armor piercing, doesn't have any advantage at all.
Right.
The other one is there's thermite. There's a weapon called thermite. What type of thermite?
Right. Yeah.
Thermite halves your armor stat rounding down. Again, but it affects your armor stat. As far as I know, and I could be wrong about this, there aren't any modifiers to the actual armor die roll, or the save die roll.
Okay.
Is that how you understand it?
Yeah. Yes.
Did that cover the confusion you were thinking of?
Yes.
Okay. So remember, it's all about the armor stat.
So you're looking at there aren't modifiers to your armor save. There are except for within like actual weapon types.
Right. All right. So, and then don't forget, when you get a critical hit, when you roll a natural 10, it does not remove their armor roll. It just removes the armor stat.
Right.
Which just means no bonuses to their armor roll.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And by the way, those darn, who's the guys that have all the zombies?
The Enlightened.
Okay, the Enlightened are really annoying because their hired hands all have 1 armor. And this is annoying because my hired hands all have 7 strength guns. Okay?
Yep.
So think about it this way. They got 5 wounds, they have 1 armor each. when you're shooting a strength 7 gun at them, and 50% of the time they're rolling a 5, and they have 1 armor, so that makes it a 6. It's about half the time you do nothing to them when you hit them. It's really frustrating. So you're suddenly wasting armor-piercing ammo to kill zombies, which actually is cool because when you think about the fluff, I don't think it's that they're wearing extra armor plates. It's just that zombies, you have to hit them in the head for them to really matters. You got to hit them with really good shots.
Really?
So it's kind of cool.
Or do enough damage that they can't.
Right.
Like, you need to do enough physical damage that they're just not a threat anymore.
It's really cool because most people's hired hands have no armor. So strength 7 pistols are just fine. Half the time you're wiping them out. But it's kind of cool. It's, again, very fluffy, and I like how it works. And 1 point of armor is really annoying. 2 is really hard. And the few things that have 3 are just down. You need thermite. You just need thermite.
You need thermite or armor piercing.
Because anything with 3 armor is probably rocking like 10, 15 wounds. Remember, the bosses are sitting with like 18, 20 wounds, so they take a lot of work.
Yeah, you got to whittle them down.
So other stuff real quick. Morale, which is called courage in this game, is handled very straightforwardly. Everybody's got a courage stat, and it's one of those plus stats. So whenever you're required to make a courage test, you got to roll equal to a high. This is what I do like about this plus system. You look at your stat, you know your number.
Right, that's true, yeah.
You don't got to remember, okay, well, do I roll 2 dice in this case and try to get under it, or do I roll 2 dice and get over? No, it's just D10, get higher than it, you're good. Equal to or higher, and you're good.
Right.
There are certain times in the game you got to make a courage test. One of them is whenever you get hit by a fire weapon, a blast weapon, or a POW 14 or Power 14 or higher weapon, you got to make a courage test. If you break, you move directly away at your normal quickness from the guy who did the damage to you, and then you're now broken, and you're going to have to make a courage test as your action next turn. And if you fail, you're going to keep fleeing towards the nearest table edge, and if you get off the table edge eventually, you are as good as dead, literally, for victory point conditions. So that's bad. But also, there is what we used to call in the Mordheim game bottle tests. In this game, they call it, I forget what they call it, bug out, or I can't remember. But anyway, there's a chance your whole game will start to panic when things go really bad.
Right.
How that works is you got to be less than half your models, but I also like this. Your boss must also be dead. So if you're killing off all your hired hands, if you've got a lot of models that are easy to kill, killing half of them doesn't really make you get nervous until the boss is also dead. Once the boss is dead, then everybody's got to make courage tests at the end of every turn, and anybody who fails is broken. And then as they start to leave, bad things happen. So pretty much your whole army's just falling apart once that happens. So that's pretty much the core stuff. There's rules for template weapons, pretty straightforward in there. What I also like, they use the D10 as a double, this is innovative, as a scatter die also. Do you see this, Craig?
Yes.
I love this. So to roll a scatter die in this game, they didn't need to patent anything. All you do is you roll a D10, and if you look at the top of the D10 is a triangle.
It's pointing somewhere.
It's pointing somewhere. So that points the direction of the scatter, and the number on the die is the distance of the scatter.
Yep.
So that's really easy. Nice way to handle that. You don't need a special template hold a certain way or anything else like that, which I like.
Right.
We've already talked about some of the sample rules and the cards. They've got all kinds of crazy stuff in here. They've got a bunch of core rules that are in the book, but then they've got other rules that are on the back of the cards as well. Things like, Spirit Shot, which is cool. The most of the Spirit Nation has this, right? What's it called? Spirit Nation?
Yeah, the Warrior Nation. The characters do. Their hired hands don't, but their characters do.
And which is awesome because it removes the need for line of sight or any penalties for shooting through cover. So basically, they can just fire the arrows in the air and they guide them with their will, which is awesome. The guy who's Tonto, he's not really Tonto, but there's a model. There's a
yeah, he might as well be Tonto.
Yes, he's actually available for the Outlaws, and I have him, and he has Spirit Shot, and I love it.
Yeah, the Apache Kid.
Yeah, Apache Kid, because he can sit behind a building and just basically project power way the heck out, which is awesome.
Yeah.
That's a cool one. The thermite rounds we talked about is cool. The Apache Kid also has a cool one where it lets he's got a thing called Scout, which after deployment, he is allowed to move himself and 3 models with intention of him anywhere else in deployment
zone. Oh, wow,
zone,
that's awesome. Like
which is
leading
fantastic.
Them forward.
Yeah, so he doesn't leave the deployment zone, but what's great is in this game, in most of the scenarios, who's ever got the most models has to set up his entire army first, then goes second. Mm-hmm. So the smaller army, and again, we talked about how big a model advantage is in the basic gameplay of integrated turns.
So and those rules are meant to mitigate that.
So this mitigates it, because now but with Apache Kid, I can look like I'm all to the left, but then Apache Kid and his 3 buddies could all of a sudden be on the right now, which is great. So that really messes with you. I love that kind of stuff, as Craig knows, to play with people's minds. Mm-hmm. So that's great. Yeah. So
they go right in with his Jedi mind trick.
All kinds of great sample rules. Carpathian and those guys can bring the dead back. They basically get knocked down and get them back up again. It's really annoying, but awesome. Yep. Some of the Warrior Nation have great hand in combat. It's just really a lot of great variety. The armies play very, very differently, which is nice. I've had a chance to play with like 4 of the different factions now. does feel very different, which I really like. Like the Lawmen, for example, have something sort of like what War Machine's Shield Wall when they're base to base. Their armor
it's like advanced echelon.
Their
or
armor
something.
gets really, really high, which was awesome, except that when you fire the heated plasma from Jesse James in there, which is thermite rounds.
They're all close together.
They're all clustered. It's a blast weapon, and thermite has your armor rounding down. So it was awesome for Jesse. So great stuff. And then also they've got the heavy support coming in, which is the big vehicles. They got transport rules. The game really has it all. We'll get to that when we sum up. But so there's a lot of good stuff going on there. And then there's great option rules too for like destructible terrain. You can blow buildings up. They got rules for civilians and using them as human shields and how they can die in collateral damage. For a lot of the narrative missions make use of them, which is really, really cool. So that's really Wild West Exodus. Did I cover most of the stuff there, Craig?
Yeah. I mean, you taught me, so this could all be wrong. I don't know. But it sounds good to me.
Hopefully most of it's right. Like I said, I've played a lot of games now, and most people who play with me seem to think we've got it right. So we'll see what happens. But now it's time to sum up. So, Craig.
Yes.
In the style of a character from a novel you may or may not have written, please describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
A character, huh?
Anyone from your novel. Anyone.
Any character.
Anybody you choose. I know it's very broad.
That's not even fair.
Gotta pick a favorite from your babies.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Now that Jesse's gone upstairs, I'm a Cole Younger. Let me tell you what's really going on. Okay, now when Jesse comes up with these dumb ideas, and I think about, they're going to go with this bank, we can go after that bank. I'll tell you what, I think in my head, how would I rate this job Jesse wants to do? Am I gonna go high? Is it gonna be really bad? I don't want to do it. So I'm thinking, there's only like a 1 in 6 chance I want to go rob that bank. Or is it going to be like a plum? You're going to just pluck it like a low-hanging fruit. You're just going to grab it, and it's going to be all juicy. That's going to be a low number. Like more often, I'm going to want to do one of those jobs. So I'm going to say a higher number is better, is worse. I don't know. I'm a second-rate character. And a lower number is better. And I don't even know why I sound this southern, but I'm going to go with that.
Thank you, Cole. That was very good.
Yes.
All right, Craig, would you like to go first and give us your sum up on the...
To be honest, Russ, and I'm springing this on Russ at the last, I don't honestly feel like I should rate it. I think I've enjoyed the game, but honestly, I've been working on it for almost a year and a half now. So not the rules, but the background in the world. I'm very invested in the world, as everybody knows. So I'll just say that I enjoy it, and I hope other people enjoy it, but I don't want to even pretend that I can be that unbiased enough to give it a rating.
Let me ask you this. What is your favorite mechanic in the game?
Influence.
Influence?
Yeah, because, my luck sucks so often that anything that I can use to mitigate it, and I like the fact that it can be used with any die roll. So if I really need something to work, and I find myself not using my influence half the time because I'm holding it back for that one time I'm going to need it, which almost never happens. Right. But just knowing that I have that little store of luck kind of in my pocket almost makes me feel more calm and more relaxed while I'm playing the game, if that makes this any sense.
Yeah, no, I really like the influence mechanic too, and I think that's so I'll try to be a little harsh here to cover for both of us, but also be fair. So yeah, my favorite mechanic in the game also was the influence, and when we played in the early betas, I was concerned about how the influence worked. I thought it would either be so much it wouldn't matter or too little, and I think they really nailed it, actually, with the right amount of influence, because in the early game, you're using it for those sniper shots, because you're thinking, well, there's only going to be like 2 shots this turn anyway, and no one's going to be shooting back anybody important, so I'm just going to take these Hail Mary shots and see if I can get him. Later in the game, you're like, oh, gosh, well, let's see. I've activated this guy now, so I really need him to hit, but Craig hasn't even activated his main guy yet, and he's going to probably have shots on 2 key guys, so how much influence do I need to keep for that? And, oh, crap. So you do have that all-in feeling at some point in the game where you're just going all in into a turn, and you're just hoping you're going to nail everybody you need to nail. So I really like how that feels. You get those stand-up die rolls. I really haven't had influence fail me yet. I haven't had one where I put 3 influence in it and roll 3 ones. Of course it could happen. It's going to happen. I haven't seen it, though. It's always come through for me when I spent it. I have had times, I more often than not need a 9 to hit. I put 3 influence in it and rolled a 9 the first time. I'm like, oh, that was a waste of 3 influence. But you just got to think of it this way. The shot I needed to hit, I put all my mojo into it. So you seem to get that more often than not. But that I like. So let me give it from the top here. I think the game, of the 4 things, okay, so we've talked about background. I think, at this risk of sounding like I'm pandering to my friend here, Craig, the background material is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
And no, it's not just you. I mean, your presentation was fantastic. Your writing style is awesome. You've got all this material we need. I love the book. I love the novel. I love this stuff. But also, the brainchild from Romeo's initial idea to how Outlaw Miniatures executed it, the whole universe is great. From the art style in the comics to the miniature styling of the guys and your execution of the storytelling really is a very compelling universe. And that's the kind of thing that keeps games like Games Workshop and War Machine and other games, and Malifaux too, in the hunt, because it's like that universe is so compelling. You want to live in it. You want to be in it all the time. And this has got that. And it's very unique. You don't see a super unique universe, which is awesome. Models, again, the models got to be awesome. The models are awesome. The models are fantastic. You just look at Jesse, you see the story on all of his little bits and his guns and his robot arms, and you're like, oh man, how did he get those arms again? I got to go read about that now. That is my one ding, though, on how it's presented. I would say I do miss the ability, like Billy the Kid's got the Chief's knife. Wow, how did he get the Chief's knife? Where did he get that from? And in War Machine or Malifaux, I could look up the one-page blurb on Billy next to his specs and know the basics without having to go through. If I want to learn more about Billy, I got to go through a novel or 200 pages of a fluff. Not anything wrong with that, but it's hard to get quick chomps. Because I'll admit, when I first get a new game, I go right to the rules.
Well, there's also a lot of stuff that's not even in there, to be honest, because the models and the characters were evolving as the fluff was being written. So I don't even know anything about Billy's Chief's knife. So
yeah, so my two, well, that too, but that's okay. That gives you more stuff later. But
but I agree 100%. And I would love, as much as I don't like reading history in miniatures games, I like having some place where I can go and look for specific information.
Right, it's a reference work,
yeah. And I don't think you could do both in one rule book, but I think maybe someday someone other than myself could collate all this stuff together into a coherent timeline that gives it more of a history book presentation, which would also be sort of a cool supplement for people who like the fluff but don't know or want to be able to find the stuff in a moment's notice would be able to enjoy that.
Yeah, I think that's something I miss, and I also miss the little blurb for each faction with some stats and stuff. I like to if I were going for example, when my daughter picked War Machine, I was able to show her all the things in the rulebook, and so it's harder to kind of do that kind of thing with it. But you have the websites; so it's not too bad nowadays. But that's the book. The models are great. The book's good. I do wish it had an index. It's not referenceable at all, which is unfortunate.
Right.
Good. The only saving grace there is the rules aren't super complicated. That's the good news. I will have to make a quick reference sheet up. I love how the game plays in the tabletop. It is deadly. It is deadly, and your models die very, very quickly.
Yes, they do.
Even the big guys will. If you send your leader out because you've got a really good shot, like this happened to Adam. He had the guy with the spider. What's the guy with the spider, Craig?
Yep, that would be Eiffel.
Eiffel. Yeah. So Eiffel comes running out. He charges 2 hired hands, gets them both in, kills them both. He's sitting there, yeah, I killed both hired hands. Jesse James walks out from behind the wall. Hey, Eiffel. Fires his pistols. Jesse's got 3 activations, right? Fires his pistols on 4 shots. Pings Eiffel a little bit, doesn't do much. He's like, oh yeah, puts his pistols together, super shots it, blows Eiffel out to bits. Just like that. Which is fluffy, awesome, looked really, really cool, and made Adam frown. But it did take care of Eiffel. But I've lost Jesse. Actually, I haven't lost Jesse. I've lost Billy the Kid the same way. Jesse's never died. Jesse's had a good time. I'm going to say, I don't know if Jesse's overbalanced or not, but Jesse's really obvious how to play him, and he works great. So I don't know about faction balance yet. I've seen Geronimo do some major nastiness, but I've also seen Geronimo die.
Yeah.
So
I've seen Geronimo kill Sitting Bull for all the people that are like, oh, Sitting Bull's unstoppable. Well, I saw him stopped. In fact, I was running him when he got stopped.
Right. So I've seen that before, so I don't know enough. It's going to take some time. I do like how different the factions play. I like the models. I think the rules are there. There are going to be some things. The rule book is version 1. And there are going to be things in there people are going to find, tournament play, they're going to argue about. You have to house rule it. We're going to have to wait for the first facts going to come out. There's going to be little niggly bits. I'm sure there's going to be interaction in the models that's going to happen. It's a V1 miniature game. That's going to be there. So it doesn't have some of that, super laser beam clarity that like a War Machine game might have. But it's okay. It's not hard. You can figure it out and you get into it. There's enough there to get going. I really like it a lot. Craig, I think there could be something here long term. I think there's really something nice here.
I hope so.
I think so. I think you really have something here. I think Outlaw Miniatures has something here, and I think the rules are unique enough and subtle enough people are going to be attracted to it. So I'm going to say if I'm going to give it a 4+ to start.
Okay.
For the average miniature gamer. Some people are kind of not like some elements of how it plays. Some people are. But I think what's going to get it, if you're a cowboy fan, if you're a fan of the Old West, I'm going to add +2.
Oh.
I think it's I don't want to say the only, but it is probably the best Old West game. Now, it's alternate Old West, so it's not pure Old West. But if you played like Outlaws versus the Lawmen,
right,
you're pretty close to that, especially if you stick with pretty much mostly hired hands. As soon as you add in the characters, of course, you got to have Jesse James with his hyper pistols and all that stuff. But it doesn't matter because it's Jesse James with hyper pistols. So it's just awesome. And then you got, like, we had it all set up with, I played with Ryan the other day, and Ryan had all the micro arts terrain that was officially part of the Kickstarter, looking good. And we had all the hover bikes parked out in front of the, we weren't using them, but he didn't put the models on, so they're parked out in front, and he had the truck sitting there in the middle. It just looks so cool. It's just a universe you just wanted to just soak in, like Clint Eastwood in that one Western tub. It's just so cool. So, and we were throwing, like, good, the bad, and the ugly quotes at each other. It's just, it's such a fun universe. It's just fun to play a cowboy game with all that wackiness. So, my only worry about it is being such a broad, being both a skirmish game and a big army scale game, is it going to know what it wants to be?
Is it trying to do too many things?
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to have to scale down and scale up eventually at some point. But and I don't know how the vehicles are going to work. Is it going to break when you have low model count but a vehicle running around? That kind of stuff. I don't know. So
Well, I mean, we didn't see this game, but Will played somebody at his house, and he ran the Doomsday, I think, and the Doomsday got shot up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I haven't seen it myself.
Yeah.
But from one example where we were being told what was happening, the vehicle took a lot to take it down, but it did get taken down. Get taken down by an army that didn't have any vehicles.
That's good to know. So we'll see. So we'll have to come back to this after we played it a few more times and after we've gotten some big vehicles in. But we definitely wanted to give you guys our first looks after we played. 10 or so games between the two of us, and have played different factions, have a chance to paint the models, put the models together. I couldn't be more pleased with my models, Craig, and I am super proud to back the Kickstarter and have all that stuff. So it's in my books is one of my favorite Kickstarters to back, and I'm really looking forward to playing more games on the tabletop.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your support, and thank everybody who's been so supportive through this whole process. It's been awesome for me, so thank you.
And thank you for listening to this extra long review of Wild West Exodus.
Yeehaw!
You're listening to the D6 generation. Born to game.
About our friends at Geek Nation Tours, Craig.
Geek Nation Tours!
Hey, we got a new announcer there. Look at that. So, yes, our friends at Geek Nation Tours, the ultimate way to go on any substantial geeky trip anywhere in the world. Craig, what is the hotness going on over there right now?
Well, right now you're looking at if you go to their website, geeknationtours.com, and you click on upcoming tours, you're going to be looking at Geeking Out in the Emerald City, Adepticon, which of course is huge, Brick World, and all kinds of cool stuff. The problem is that it doesn't tell you where these things are on that page. You have to click on to the next thing, so I can't just scan over all of them. But it's really cool. I'm guessing the one with the Piper is Scotland. Yes, Geeking Out with the UK, and Scotland, which is awesome. So basically what you're looking at, if you go on this webpage, all the different feudal Japan. So there's a trip to Japan. There's a trip to Waterloo. Of course, New York Comic Con. They hit all the biggest cons, too. And the thing is that you're going on these trips. Let's explain a little bit of what these trips are. Yeah. They're completely organized for gamers. Mm-hmm. So you're going to these places, these historical places, or you're going to Scotland, or you're going to a convention. Not only are you going there and you're going to see what it is that a geek would go there to see, you're also seeing all of the other local points of interest that would connect in any way to geek culture or historical wargaming or sci-fi or fantasy. So you're seeing real castles. You're seeing all kinds of really cool stuff, all organized for you and all traveling with people who like the things that you like. So not only are you seeing all this stuff, you're playing games on the bus, you're playing games at night, and it's all been arranged by Terrace and his crew so that you've got the intro dinner at the beginning where they're going to give you an overview of everything, and you're going to get kind of an introduction by people from the area that know what they're talking about, they know what they're doing, or they're us, in which case they know neither of those things. But really, I mean, it's an expert put together professional touring package for gamers with gamers. It's really just an awesome way to travel in any of these different destinations you could choose.
For sure. And what you want to make sure you also don't miss out on is if you are thinking about going to Gen Con this year, the way you want to get there is Geek Nation Tours, because not only will they take you to all the cool geeky hotness in the greater Indianapolis area, but you will also get to go to the very, very cool Welcome to Gen Con dinner. And you get to see us with, we'll be there, Craig and I, as well as Nicole, and we'll be there. Dice Tower Podcast will be there. Folks from Stronghold Games will be there. All kinds of great stuff going on. So be sure to check that out as well.
Folks from Artemis will be there.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep. So hey, get that. That tour is filling up quickly, too, by the way. So if you are thinking about that and you're on the edge of your seat.
And hotels are pretty much gone in Indianapolis. So it might be the only way you can get a really good hotel room.
Hotels are gone, but Geek Nation Tours has already got their block. So if you sign up on one of their tours, you will have a hotel room as well for Geek Nation Tours.
And, and again, just like I said, they've got everything planned out ahead of time. Now, you don't have to do everything they have planned out for you, but they've got everything set up so you can do the True Dungeon, you can do the Artemis, and we're going to be there for a lot of the stuff because it's cool, and we're going to just enjoy doing it.
So check it all out at geeknationtours.com.
geeknationtours.com.
This Jever Notice is brought to you by Cranky. 9 out of 10 Cranky lawyers agree supporting the D6G via Patreon is worth every penny. Thanks, Cranky. Did you ever notice that no matter how much people talk about any topic or various discussion group or whatever, there's always someone out there who really doesn't want to talk about the topic. They just kind of want to throw in a little bomb every now and then and sort of stir things up and maybe upset people and then see how they run around and how they act. I've been meaning to talk about this for quite a while now because I've noticed it's always upset me. And I think I've talked about it before, but it's been even more and more alarming lately. And I'm talking about trolls. Those individuals who go on there, and I've been reading a lot of forum posts lately, and both gaming and current event, and of course there was that review, and I've noticed that there seems to be an uptick, if you will, in troll behavior. And of course, I'm going to define trolls as not people who disagree with other people, because I think that's what those forums and those comment sections are for. It's not for, cheerleaders and things just talking about like what that article was about and how much I agree with it. You-ha, we-ha, whatever. But discourse between people who might honestly disagree about something and can talk about it. And I've had conversations like that, both online and face to face, throughout my entire life. And I think they're great. I don't personally enjoy them a lot. But I'd much rather have that than, just a bunch of people who beat on someone else because they didn't agree. I've been on the receiving end of that. Or watch a bunch of people that I agree with beat on someone who we don't agree with, and I've seen that happen, and I don't enjoy that either. But trolls are people who have no interest in that. They have no interest. They don't even have any interest in making a serious point. Their interest is in upsetting people and derailing the conversation with personal attacks and just spiteful nastiness. I don't know what this might say about your average troll, but generally their spelling and their grammar is really bad, whether they're just not taking the time and they don't care, or they're legitimately that ignorant. I don't know. And that's on all sides of issues. But the key is, what we're talking about here is a personality type that really, really just wants to stir things up and wants to upset people and then see how they react. These would be bullies, if they were acting like this in real life, and would generally be shut down, especially in today's anti-bullying culture. But one last refuge of the bully happens to be forums and comment sections, and it's just ludicrous, and it upsets me every time, whether or not those people happen to be falling down on the same side of an issue that I'm on. And you see it. It's not a specific side of any one specific issue. It's all sides of all issues have their trolls. And it really, really bugs me. Just to give some credit where credit is due, listener Benny actually pointed this out to me, and he reached out from the last Did You Ever Notice? And I really appreciated that. What kind of person, for instance, opens an account on a forum or a discussion page or whatever, specifically to say one mean, nasty thing, and ever says anything about anything ever again? That's a troll. And so that's the most recent and most personal example, but really it's just been bothering me for a very long time now. And something that I think happened organically that I thought was awesome, and something happened organically that I thought was awesome, and I thought it would be fantastic if I could somehow orchestrate this around the world. And I know I can't, but then it occurred to me I could talk to you guys about it, and maybe with your help we could start something that might result in the same effect. And what I'm talking about is the person that jumps on there with some nasty ad hominem attack, some nasty personal spiteful comment, and gets completely ignored. There's no response. The response is silence. He's completely ignored. It's as if they didn't make a post at all. And then they post again with something even worse, and still no one is commenting on it at all. Nobody's jumping on him. Nobody's attacking his grammar or his spelling. Nobody's saying, hey, that's a mean ad hominem attack. Literally ignoring it. And it's hard. It's hard to ignore these people. If you are motivated to comment at all, your motivation is to comment about what a jerk you are and how dare you do that, blah, 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 blah. But seriously, silence. Then a few more comments down, they jump in again. Hey, blah, 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 blah. Nothing. And 4 or 5 more of those, and then, okay, well, I gotta go to work. You losers hang out, stay cool, blah, blah, blah. And they're all upset, and you don't hear from them again. It's exactly what your parents told you should do about bullies. If you ignore them, they go away. And that is very true about most, and of course all of these things. It's sociology, so nothing is iron hard, but it's it works most of the time. And I always think, oh my God, that is it's like this beautiful orchestration of that passive defense where you're just sort of judoing them away, or I can't remember what martial art just uses your opponent's momentum against them, but Aikido, I don't know, but whatever it is, that's what you're doing. You're just like completely ignoring them, and it's awesome. And it's gotten to the point now where when I see that happen, it's great. And then of course down the line you see some well-meaning person jump in and attack the troll, and you're like, oh God, no, because then there it goes, the whole thing's been derailed. So here is what I'm asking you, the D6 generation. If you're out there, and I don't even know, how would you even do this? You can't say, hey guys, let's not feed the troll, because people try that and it just doesn't work. But seriously, let's make that our goal for 2014. Somehow, maybe through email. Maybe we have to do this it has to be super grassroots. But get the word out there that when you see a troll, you just ignore him, and he goes away. I mean, eventually maybe he's going to do something awful like rob a bank or something to get attention. But until that happens, we won't have to worry about him. And then it's easier to figure out who it is, because it's the guy, with the misspelled note. that he hands the bank teller. Anyway, and that's what I was thinking. And I think it would be great if all of the, smart, mature people of the world could get together and agree to ignore all the stupid people, not just the commenters. If we could do that, that'd be super. That'd be awesome. Oh, to dream. Oh, well. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about that. So thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Craig, give me a little noise there.
My levels will be low. They will be low.
No, they look good, actually.
No? Okay. Well, you sure? Because I've been shouting.
Mac, why don't you give me a little level 2 there?
Level 2?
Yeah, there you go.
Are we supposed to escape from like level 2, or is that level 7?
No.
No, don't go to level 7.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, did you... wait, they announced their new level 7 game. Did you see that?
No.
Looks like Risk, but the aliens invade. So we'll see what happens to that.
Intriguing.
Yeah, but I'm bummed there's not going to be Omega Protocol expansion pack. I want that.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
I haven't played that game yet. What do you guys think of it?
Oh, Omega Protocol is fantastic. The first level
It's
7
really
game,
good.
First level 7
It's
game
a lot of fun.
was meh. The second one is fantastic. Omega Protocol. It's XCOM, the board game, Mac. That's all you need to know.
Oh, that is all I need to know.
That's
and I'm
all
in.
you need to know. Go
Well,
buy it.
there you go. Max in.
All right, cool.